Chapter 1435. When Qiguan rang and the other two arrived at the meeting hall, most of the people had already arrived. The three of them saluted and took their respective seats. Wei Ci was still absent-minded, his face slightly pale. Jiang Pengji frowned slightly. If there was nothing important, Wei Ci's sense of responsibility would not be distracted in an official setting. She looked around and confirmed that all her confidants were present. Jiang Pengji then cleared her throat and told them the reason for the emergency meeting. We received an urgent secret letter from Nanxing this morning. The Alliance Army of Nanxing has conquered the hinterlands of the four tribes and captured more than 1 million people. After a discussion among the Alliance's feudal lords, they unanimously agreed to massacre the barbarians of the four tribes. Jiang Pengji's gaze was calm, as if she was talking about an insignificant matter. Everyone had heard rumors before they came, but when they heard the news from Jiang Pengji, even Yang Si and the others were visibly moved. In troubled times, human lives were like grass. People would always die in war. They were mentally prepared, but to massacre 1 million people at once, Li Yun probed, 1 million strong young men? Jiang Pengji said impatiently, the population of the four tribes of Nanman is small. After 10 years of chaos, how can there be 1 million strong young men? If there were 1 million strong young men, they would have wiped out the Alliance Army of Nanxing long ago. Most of the 1 million people are elderly, women, children, and babies. Perhaps the women's fetuses are also included. The Alliance Army of Nanxing is venting their hatred for the annihilation of their country. They are really ruthless. The four tribes of Nanman had been fighting for years. The depletion of the young men could not keep up with the speed of replenishment. In addition to the epidemic last year, their combat power was seriously affected. If the weather had not turned cold soon after the outbreak of the epidemic, which more or less suppressed the epidemic, more people would have died from the epidemic. In ancient times, the medical standards were poor, hygiene awareness was poor, and medical resources were lacking. Once the epidemic broke out, the casualties would be more tragic than the earthquake in Shangjing. Was it a lie to say that 9 out of 10 rooms were empty? According to Jiang Pengji's knowledge, there were a few large-scale epidemics in this era that affected a wide area. The number of deaths and injuries from each epidemic was in the millions. One must know that the entire population of Dongqing was only slightly more than 20 million. Qiguan Rang frowned and said, even if it's the hatred for the annihilation of the country, the method of massacring the entire tribe is really ruthless. Hundreds of years ago, wars and massacres were common, but with the passage of time, massacres were no longer common. No one would say how many people were killed during a war, but after many victories, very few people would continue to kill captives, unless they ran out of rations. Under normal circumstances, the victorious side would demote the defeated captives into slavery and sell them as human slaves or use them as cheap labor. Most of the captives mentioned above referred to soldiers who had participated in the war but had been defeated. However, the captives that the Nanxing Alliance had slaughtered were mostly the elderly, the weak, women, and children. Don't say who is ruthless. In my opinion, the Nanxing Alliance and the four factions of Nanman are jackals of the same tribe. Jiang Pengji snorted and said, when the four factions of Nanman massacred the people of Nanxing, I didn't see them show any mercy. Similarly, in the early days of Nanxing's establishment, in order to prevent Nanman from rebelling, they captured hundreds of thousands of Nanman tribesmen to be forced into servitude as soldiers. More than 200,000 died of exhaustion and in battle. Nanxing also claimed to be the suzerain of the four tribes of Nanman. They used their powerful troops to force the other side to pay tribute. They collected 9 out of 10 taxes and sent troops to suppress them several times. They slaughtered no less than 100,000 Nanman people. This is all bad debt. In the early days of Nanxing's establishment, how many gentry relied on the blood of the four tribes of Nanman to enrich their own pockets? They forcibly captured them as slaves and gave them the least amount of food to do the heaviest work. They didn't treat them as humans, but as beasts that could talk. Wasn't the hatred that the four tribes of Nanman had for Nanxing also forced out by these people? After the four tribes of Nanman became powerful, they destroyed Nanxing. The feudal lords of Nanxing then joined forces to counterattack Nanman until they decided to slaughter millions of people and exterminate their entire tribe. I don't mind exterminating an entire tribe, but don't use the righteous banner of revenge. Do you really think that you are so clean? Among the feudal lords of Nanxing's alliance, how many of their ancestors had enjoyed the sweetness of the blood of the 4 tribes of Nanman? Jiang Pengji felt that this group of people was also interesting. They were very good at using double standards. War was war. Murder was murder. Extermination of an entire tribe was extermination of an entire tribe. Stop finding messy excuses to whitewash peace. Those who kill should be prepared to be killed. Seeing that Jiang Pengji's words were getting more and more out of line, Qiguan Rang and Wei Ci coughed in unison. The two of them looked at each other from a distance and quickly looked away. Jiang Pengji rubbed her head. She had no choice but to stop talking and deal with the content vaguely. It wasn't that she was afraid. It was just that the trivial matter between Nanxing and Nanman was not the main topic of today's discussion. There was no need to waste time. Nanxing is our neighbor, and Jiangzhou is ruled by Yang Tao, the feudal lord of Nanxing. If Yang Tao is ambitious, Zhe, Hu, and Hu counties will be easily lost without the protection of natural barriers. My lord has to be on guard. Yang Si stood up and changed the topic. If Nanxing is not threatened by external aggression, it will only take 3 to 5 years of recuperation to recover its strength. When that time comes, it will become a great threat. In my opinion, we need to make countermeasures as soon as possible. This wasn't taking advantage of the situation, it was taking preventive measures. Who asked Yang Tao to occupy Jiangzhou? Jiangzhou was a great hidden danger to Zhe County, Hu County, and Hu County. Because there were no safe natural barriers. If Yang Tao sent his troops from Jiangzhou, it would be extremely difficult to defend these 3 places. Who would feel at ease? Unfortunately, the 3 counties were more fertile places under Jiang Pengji's rule. Hu County was a large producer of grain. Once it was lost, the loss could be said to be fatal. Anyway, Nanxing had already destroyed Nanman. If Jiang Pengji chose this time to send her troops, the world could not blame her. Jing Rong's worries are exactly what I'm worried about, Jiang Pengji said. Regarding this, do you have any opinions? Even if Jiang Pengji's god-slaying sword was already unbearably thirsty, she still had to go through the necessary procedures. War was not something that could be fought on a whim. Before fighting, she had to rack her brains to find a proper excuse. She could not possibly say, I suspect that Yang Tao will beat me in the future, so I want to strangle him now, could she? She and Yang Tao were not considered friends, but they were not enemies either. They had even worked together twice. It seemed like there was no reason for them to have a conflict. Jiang Pengji had an excuse, but she needed her subordinates to cooperate with her to dig up old scores. Feng Zhen was quick-witted and understood. An excuse to start a war? Coincidentally, there was one. Last year, when his lord dealt with Madame Tao played a suffocating trick in an attempt to incur enmity between her and Yang Tao. However, this matter was suppressed by his lord. Yang Tao was also busy with the battlefield in Nanxing, so he did not give any response. Feng Zhen's mood changed, and he immediately had an idea. While Jiang Pengji was sharpening her sword, Yang Tao, who was far away in Nanxing, was completely unaware. Not only that, but he had also fallen slightly ill. After a few days, he had lost a lot of weight. As Yang Tao's close friend, Yan Lin naturally knew where the root of the illness was. To put it bluntly, Yang Tao was still too kind. Chapter 1436. Yang Tao had a good foundation. After a few days of careful care, he recovered, but he still seemed to be in low spirits. At this time, the alliance held a banquet and invited Yang Tao. Unable to resist, Yang Tao had no choice but to attend. At the banquet, everyone toasted and smiled happily, as if they had finally gotten rid of a heavy burden. The 4 tribes of Nanman, which had caused the destruction of Nanxing, were finally exterminated. But Yang Tao didn't know what to eat. He didn't touch the food on the table and only took a few sips of sake. His face was pale. Yan Lin could only sigh, but he couldn't console him on this occasion. And Shui had completely turned over a new leaf. Thanks to Hua Yuan's secret plan, his forces were the most well-preserved. Even when the plague was rampant, they didn't suffer many losses. The other vassal forces suffered heavy losses and naturally didn't have the right to compete with Shui. They could only feign civility. Naturally, Shui became the leader of the alliance army. He had the greatest right to speak, becoming the alliance leader in name only. After the banquet began, he praised everyone's contributions as usual. The other vassals smiled and echoed, occasionally praising Shui. Of course, it didn't matter if they thought so or not. Shui was satisfied with everyone's reaction. The hatred and resentment that had accumulated over the years disappeared with the extermination of the 4 tribes of Nanman. Nanman was the mountain that had been weighing on his heart. Now that this mountain had been overturned, he could finally relax. Listening to the joyful songs and praises, Yang Tao's hand that was holding the wine cup tightened slightly, and a sharp glint flashed across his eyes. Yan Lin and Yang Tao grew up together and naturally knew each other's temperament. He quickly tugged at Yang Tao's sleeve, his eyes full of disapproval. Yang Tao always listened to his best friend. He could only bear with it. In anger, he raised his chin and downed the wine in the bottle. Seeing this, Yan Lin heaved a sigh of relief. He motioned for the maid to fill up Yang Tao's wine bottle. In this situation, it was better to just get Yang Tao drunk. Unexpectedly, Shui didn't have any tacit understanding. Seeing Yang Tao downing cup after cup, he smiled and raised his cup. Here, I would like to propose a toast to you. If you hadn't trained your troops well and fought bravely, we wouldn't have been able to conquer Nanman so easily. Then, Shui's strategist, Hua Yuan, also smiled and flattered him. Hearing Hua Yuan's words, Yang Tao, who had been drinking his sorrows, exploded like a firecracker. He snorted coldly and suddenly threw the golden bronze wine goblet at Hua Yuan. If Hua Yuan had not subconsciously tilted his head to avoid it, the wine goblet would have definitely smashed into his face. Everyone was startled by this turn of events. The dancers in the camp also stopped and trembled. With a clang, the wine goblet fell to the ground and made a huge noise. Hua Yuan was able to avoid the wine bottle, but the sake in the wine bottle was not so easy to avoid. Hua Yuan's wine was splashed. Yang Tao stood up angrily, gritted his teeth, and said, "What qualifications do you have to mention my father? You've insulted his wisdom." The crowd was stunned again. Hua Yuan had not said anything bad about Yang Jian just now. Instead, he had praised Yang Jian for teaching his son well. Like father, like son. Why was Yang Tao so angry? Hua Yuan raised his hand to wipe the wine off his face. He stood up and bowed in apology, but Yang Tao did not appreciate it at all. Shui felt a little embarrassed, but he had to intervene. He muttered to himself, "What's wrong with Yang Tao?" Yang Tao did not give Shui any face. He mocked Hua Yuan, "I'm ashamed to be associated with animals." Shui's face turned green when he heard this. Hua Yuan was his right-hand man. What did Yang Tao mean by calling him an animal in front of him? Hua Yuan did not get angry. Instead, his lips curled into a mocking smile. Yan Lin's heart sank when he saw this. Yang Tao flicked his sleeves and left. Yan Lin followed closely behind, leaving behind a group of confused vassals. Outside the tent, a cold wind blew, cooling his burning chest a little. His anger also subsided a little. "My lord?" Yan Lin stood behind him and called out softly. Yang Tao's face paled. He lowered his head and said dejectedly, "Xiaoyang, do you think I did something wrong?" "I was impulsive," Yan Lin said calmly. "You are a noble vassal. Why did you have to confront a despicable person like Hua Yuan?" Yang Tao pursed his lips and said stubbornly, "I couldn't control my anger when I heard him speak." Yan Lin asked him, "Are you happy now, my lord?" Yang Tao said, "Xiaoyang, let's rest for a few days and leave." I don't want to stay in this foul place any longer. Yan Lin sighed. If we leave now, we will suffer great losses. War was a money-burning job. When could they make money? When could they divide the spoils of war? The 4 tribes of Nanman had destroyed Nansheng. They had looted and killed along the way. Over the years, they had looted countless treasures. If they left now, they would be giving up on the spoils that Yang Tao deserved. Yang Tao knew that he was being impulsive. He said, "But I don't want to see these people's faces anymore." Yan Lin said, "If that's the case, then you can continue to claim that you are sick. I will take care of the rest." Yan Lin couldn't blame his friend for being so stubborn. He didn't like Hua Yuan either. The alliance had conquered the 4 tribes of Nanman and captured millions of people. These were all spoils of war. They could divide them up after a while. They didn't expect Hua Yuan to stand up and make a speech, which aroused the hatred of the alliance towards Nanman. He suggested to exterminate the 4 tribes of Nanman. And Shui strongly supported it. Many of the wavering feudal lords were also won over. Only Yang Tao insisted on opposing it. Kill what? Killing the prisoners of war was one thing, but why kill the old, weak, sick and disabled? However, Yang Tao was from Dongqing. He didn't have much say in the alliance, so he couldn't stop it. If that was the case, Yang Tao wouldn't be so disgusted with Hua Yuan. Who asked Hua Yuan to do 2 heinous things? Hua Yuan ordered his men to gather the babies of Nanman, throw them to death, and strangle them one by one. How much hatred and resentment did they have? The other matter was also the root cause of Yang Tao's small illness, which was also the knot in his heart. The alliance took several days to conquer the 4 tribes of Nanman and captured millions of people of all ages. Among the captives, there were men and women, old and young. Other than the Nanman people, there were also tens of thousands of Nansheng women. These women were captured by the 4 tribes of Nanman to be used as captives to vent their lust and reproduce. These women suffered inhumane torture here. Those who were in better health gave birth to 1 child after another. Those who were in poor health didn't even last a month or 2. Many even died in childbirth. When the alliance arrived, many of the women were pregnant. Hearing that the alliance had arrived, they cried tears of joy. Who knew that what awaited them was another nightmare? The alliance ordered the slaughter of Nanman. The children in their wombs naturally belonged to Nanman. What should we do with them? Hua Yuan, or Gulin, sneered and said, "Take them down. If we can't, cut them open and take them out." There were no abortion pills in the army. Chapter 1437. Whenever I recall the scene that day, I really want to kill Hua Yuan with a single slash. Yang Tao had an open and candid personality, and it was very rare for him to truly hate someone. Hua Yuan's actions made him make an exception. Don't you think so too? Yang Tao was silent for a while, then said, "There's something I still can't figure out." Yan Lin asked, "What is it?" Yang Tao said, "The 4 factions of Nanman have committed heinous crimes. This is an undeniable fact. I can understand that Hua Yuan hates Nanman. The only thing that couldn't be understood was that, looking at his past experience, although Hua Yuan had his ups and downs, it was not to the extent of forming such a deep hatred with the southern man. How innocent were those women who were captured by the southern man? Although the babies in their wombs are of barbarian blood, the mother is from Nansheng. Yang Tao could understand if Shui insisted on slaughtering the 4 factions of Nanman. This was because Shui's parents, wife, and children had all died tragically under the butcher knives of the southern barbarians. That kind of hatred was something that outsiders could not understand. In order to gather troops for revenge, Shui had suffered a lot in Dongqing. It was normal for him to want nothing more than to exterminate the southern barbarians. Where was Hua Yuan? According to Yang Tao's investigation, Hua Yuan's hatred for the South barbarians was exaggerated. It was really puzzling. Why were they abducted and raped by the 4 factions of Nanman? Yang Tao clenched his fists and gritted his teeth in anger. Isn't it because the men of Nansheng are useless and stupid? If it weren't for the royal family's inaction and the aristocrats, eunuchs, and relatives playing for power, these women wouldn't have ended up like this. If it weren't for the fact that these people couldn't defend their country well, these women wouldn't have to suffer such inhumane torture. It wasn't easy for them to escape, but Hua Yuan and the others used the excuse that the children in their wombs were leftover evildoers to force an abortion. It's really infuriating. Even an outsider like Yang Tao couldn't stand it anymore. Taking 10,000 steps back, if the flower abyss really couldn't tolerate people of the southern barbarian bloodline, why couldn't they deal with them after they gave birth? If she forced an abortion, the child in her womb would definitely die, and the mother would not be able to survive either. The barbarians of the 4 factions of Nanman deserved to die, but how innocent were these women? Every time Yang Tao recalled the situation that day, he always felt that something was stuck in his heart, making him feel uncomfortable all over. Yan Lin said thoughtfully, "We'll leave with our troops once we're done with our business." Yang Tao nodded. He was no longer a child. He couldn't give up the spoils of war that the entire army had risked their lives for just because of one person's temper. "Xiao Yang, I'm a little worried about Xiao Yin," Yang Tao said. "Hua Yuan and Xiao Yin don't get along. Hua Yuan is so violent, I'm worried." Lu Zhang and Hua Yuan were both advisors under Shui's command. Even if their political views differed, Hua Yuan wouldn't go so far as to kill them. Yan Lin laughed. "No matter what, Lu Zhang is Master Yuanjing's favorite student. You don't have to worry about him, my lord." Yang Tao mumbled, "I also know that Xiao Yin is Master Yuanjing's disciple, but Hua Yuan is too strange. I'm a little worried." Come to think of it, Yang Tao had once encountered Hua Yuan's murderous intent towards Lu Zhang. If Yang Tao had not appeared at that time, who knew what Hua Yuan would have done? Yan Lin smiled. "If you're really worried, why don't you find a chance to remind Lu Zhang so that he can take precautions?" Yang Tao said helplessly, "I reminded Xiao Yin earlier, but I'm afraid Xiao Yin didn't take it to heart." This time, it was Yan Lin's turn to feel helpless. Yang Tao reminding Lu Zhang to be wary of Hua Yuan was seen as sowing discord in the eyes of outsiders. It would be strange if Hua Yuan would take the warning to heart. Little did they know that Lu Zhang had already fallen for Yang Tao's tricks. This matter had to start from when the alliance conquered the southern barbarians. And Shui and Hua Yuan were firm supporters of exterminating the tribe. Naturally, Lu Zhang wouldn't agree. Didn't they know that captives were considered spoils of war? The hidden value of captives was far more valuable than visible spoils of war. Why did they have to kill them all? Lu Zhang disagreed 1,000 times over. He couldn't be bothered to argue with Hua Yuan. It would be a success as long as he could convince his lord Shui. Unfortunately, Lu Zhang tried to persuade Shui, but Shui still wouldn't budge. They had to be exterminated. "Xiao Yin, do you know the pain of having your country destroyed and your family destroyed? There's no room for negotiation. The 4 tribes of southern barbarians are a bunch of uncivilized barbarians. Keeping them alive will only bring us great trouble." And Shui was born into an aristocratic family, so he naturally believed in bloodlines. The evil of the 4 tribes of southern barbarians was innate. If he let the captives go, they would definitely come back. It was better to eliminate them once and for all. To this day, Shui still remembered how those barbarians had barged into his house, how they had raped his wife and daughter to death. Even his infant son, who was still in swaddling clothes, had not been able to escape. Instead, he had been thrown to the ground and trampled on by the beasts. His elderly parents had lost their dignity, thrown to the ground by the hair and dragged to their deaths. His wife, concubines, and servants, none of them had been spared. The first half of Shui's life was comfortable and happy, but when disaster struck, he would suffer. Lu Zhang's motive was profit. After weighing the pros and cons, he chose to keep the captives. Shui knew what he was thinking. However, Shui didn't need these benefits. He only wanted the 4 tribes of southern barbarians to pay the heaviest price for their bloody deeds. Exterminating the southern barbarians was Shui's motivation for living. It was also an important mission that he had to complete for the rest of his life. No one could persuade him otherwise. Therefore, Shui stood his ground and handed the extermination of the tribe to Hua Yuan. He knew that Hua Yuan was of the same mind as him. Lu Zheng was extremely disappointed. He didn't pay attention to his surroundings on his way back. Halfway there, a black shadow suddenly dragged him into a nearby tent. This person was terrifyingly strong. No matter how Lu Zheng struggled, he couldn't break free from the other party's grip. The other party covered his mouth and nose with one hand and strangled his neck with the other. The force was so strong that it seemed like it was going to break his neck. Lu Zheng struggled with all his might and finally saw the person's face. It was Hua Yuan. Realizing this, Lu Zheng struggled even more violently. He used all his strength to hook the brazier in the tent with the tip of his foot. The noise attracted the patrolling soldiers. What happened? The soldier was about to open the tent to check when Hua Yuan's angry and sinister voice shouted at the soldier to leave. Lu Zheng took the opportunity to push Hua Yuan's hand away. He rolled to the side of the tent and took out a large knife. His chest heaved violently. You. Who are you? Lu Zheng coughed twice. The lack of oxygen and suffocation made his limbs weak. His head swelled and hurt. But he didn't dare to let his guard down. Instead, he pointed the tip of his knife at Hua Yuan, afraid that this lunatic would try to kill him again in the next second. Yes, Lu Zheng was very sure that Hua Yuan had really wanted to kill him just now. Seeing this, Hua Yuan revealed a sinister and cold smile. Whether it was his expression or temperament, he was very different from the Hua Yuan that Lu Zheng knew. Could it be, this lunatic was acting up again? Chapter 1438. Hua Yuan's voice was trembling and crazed. How could he still maintain his usual calm demeanor? Lu Zheng's eyes were red from the pinching, and he asked again, unwilling to give up. What kind of monster are you? You're not Hua Yuan. This was too strange. This was scarier than being possessed. Even though they knew that Hua Yuan was crazy, he had been acting normally for a long time, and no one took it seriously. They never expected that Hua Yuan would want someone's life the moment he acted up. Of course I'm not that idiot. Hua Yuan sneered. I'm Gu Lin, the son of the former Tiger General Gu Chun. Tiger General Gu Chun? Lu Zheng was stunned. He couldn't remember who this person was. He didn't know much about Nansheng. It was limited to the current feudal lords and the history of their ancestors. Gu Chun was a figure before Nansheng was destroyed. Because the cause of his death was taboo, almost no one mentioned his name. I'm warning you again, don't stop me. Otherwise, I don't mind making Shui lose his right-hand man. Lu Zheng's eyes widened, and his nerves tightened. What's so good about killing the southern man captives? Just for revenge? This person had no sense of the big picture. In reality, Gu Lin didn't have that. He didn't care about Shui at all. To Gu Lin, who was born in a military family, Shui was an ignorant and incompetent son of a noble family. It didn't matter to him whether Shui lived or died. He only wanted revenge. What else? Gu Lin sneered. If it wasn't for revenge, why would I put up with you idiots? You have a grudge against the southern man? Lu Zheng didn't know about the split personality. This Gu Lin was just a figment of Hua Yuan's imagination. He thought Gu Lin's soul had possessed him. Of course there's a grudge, and it's a blood feud. Gu Lin sneered. You're lucky this time. If you interfere again, I guarantee you won't even know how you die. Don't even think about getting that useless Shui to help you. His hatred for the southern man runs deep. Lu Zheng's lips turned pale in fear. He had seen a ghost in broad daylight. After Gu Lin had left for a while, Lu Zheng finally loosened his grip on his saber. The saber fell to the ground with a clang. Among the allied forces, not everyone wanted the southern barbarians to be exterminated, but it was undeniable that they were all afraid of the potential threat of the southern barbarians. In the past, Nanman was also suppressed by Nansheng to the point where they couldn't even lift their heads. They exploited them whenever they wanted and suppressed them whenever they wanted. They were as weak as chickens. Who would have expected that after a few decades, the four factions of Nanman would engulf the entire Nanxing land with a raging fire? The gates of the imperial capital were forcibly blasted open, the royal family was slaughtered, and almost no one was left alive in the city. It didn't matter if you were a noble aristocrat or a lowly child beggar. Under the butcher's knife of the southern barbarians, only a wronged soul was left. In troubled times, everyone was wronged. Even if their rationality told them that they should keep the captives and exploit them for their labor, their emotions were more inclined towards exterminating the entire clan. After destroying the southern barbarians, they would be completely free of worries. Hua Yuan fanned the flames, and An Chui's attitude was firm. Those who were on the fence also changed sides. No matter how much Lu Jing objected, it was useless. Who would have thought that Hua Yuan, who was used to being so shameless, would actually be able to do something even more outrageous? When Lu Jing heard that Hua Yuan didn't even spare a pregnant woman's fetus, he was completely enraged. Without another word, he picked up his sword and went to find Hua Yuan. His aggressive manner made it so that no one dared to stop him. Lu Jing held the scabbard in his left hand and the long sword in his right. He waved away the soldiers who tried to stop him, pointed his sword at Hua Yuan, and scolded, "Are you still human? All the books you've read have gone to waste. You're practically a beast. Do you understand what a beast is?" Lu Jing didn't come from a good background. He could usually restrain himself, but once he was enraged, all manners and self-restraint were thrown aside. Those women and children are so innocent. If you want to fight a war, then fight a war. If you want to kill a pregnant woman from your own country, then kill her. I really want to kick this person's head. Hua Yuan sneered and took a step back. Gulin instantly switched online. They're not innocent if they're carrying a vile spawn. If you don't pull out the roots, there will be endless trouble in the future. Don't you even understand this? Lu Jing was so angry that his eyes were bloodshot. The person in front of him didn't have the slightest intention of repenting. Who gave him the courage to say that? These women are innocent women who were captured by Nanman. They're all women of Nanxing. They've already suffered misfortune. Not only do you have no compassion, but you're also so vicious. Lu Jing was so angry that his hand holding the sword trembled. How are you any different from a beast by doing this? Gulin laughed. Everyone has their own fate. Lu Jing was completely enraged when he heard this. He raised his sword and prepared to kill. Let's see how I stab this bastard to death today. Everyone has their own fate. If that was really the case, then no one present had the right to destroy Nanman for revenge. They should accept their fate. The crowd didn't expect that Lu Jing was determined to kill, so they couldn't react for a while. By the time they reacted, Gulin had already snatched the sword from Lu Jing's hand with his excellent skills. Lu Jing had martial arts skills, but he was no match for Gulin. Just when he thought that his life was over, Gulin, who had revealed his murderous intent, suddenly shivered. All of you, leave. I'll have a good talk with this person. The crowd looked at each other. Because of Hua Yuan's power, they had no choice but to leave the tent. Lu Jing asked him with a sneer, "What tricks do you want to play now?" Hua Yuan raised his hand to touch his chest. In front of Lu Jing, he lifted the hem of his shirt to touch his crotch. He looked as if he had been struck by lightning. Lu Jing was speechless. Hua Yuan said, "You may not believe it. I'm Lu Shi. I don't know how I became like this." Lu Jing was speechless. Only a ghost would believe this. Gulin is a dead man. It's possible that his soul has possessed a living person. Lu Shi is a living person, and he's living well in Dongqing. Hua Yuan sighed and sat down on the mat. He said in confusion, "This isn't the first time. I woke up several times to find myself in a strange place. When I asked others, they all said that Lu Shi, the Duke of Lanting, is in Dongqing. If that's the case, who am I?" Lu Jing looked at the person who wanted to kill him a few breaths ago, but now looked so kind. He immediately accepted his incompetence. He took a deep breath and said, "Don't pretend to be crazy." Hua Yuan sat on the mat casually, but he was not angry at Lu Zheng's offense. He smiled and said, "Every word is true. When did I pretend to be crazy? If you don't believe me, you can ask me and see if I'm Lu Shi." Lu Zheng saw that he was upright and had no intention of avoiding the question. He hesitated. Hua Yuan had lost his mind and was not clear-headed. After Lu Zheng asked a few questions and Hua Yuan answered fluently, Lu Zheng became even more uncertain. "You're Master Yuanjing's disciple after all. When I was young, I also studied in Langyi for 3 years. We're half-brothers. For the sake of our old friendship, can you tell me what happened? Why did I suddenly become a man?" Chapter 1439. Hua Yuan's endless pestering finally made Lu Zheng relent. He took out the information he wanted. He said, "Now that you mention it, it's interesting. When I'm not awake, someone else takes over my place?" Lu Zheng was speechless. How was it someone else taking over his place? The so-called Lu Shi in front of him was a dove himself. Without waiting for Lu Zheng to answer, he asked again, Are you sure that Lu Shi is in Dongqing?" Lu Zheng knew about Hua Yuan's unmentionable illness. In the past, he didn't mention it because of his illness, but now he was too lazy to hide it. "I've never heard of Lu Shi's illness. Your body is called Hua Yuan. This person has the unmentionable illness of unmentionable illness." Speaking of this, Lu Zheng revealed a somewhat malicious smile. He said, "People who are unmentionable illness are crazy. It's still up for debate who you really are." Lu Shi's expression turned solemn when he heard this. Obviously, he knew what unmentionable illness meant. Lu Zheng's words indirectly denied the meaning of his existence. "How can I not be Lu Shi? I'm indeed Lu Shi. I don't know why I've become like this." His originally calm expression became stiff and unnatural for a moment. Seeing this, Lu Zheng took a small step back and put some distance between the two of them. He was afraid that Hua Yuan would act up again. Lu Shi looked dispirited, as if he was thinking about something. His eyes flickered non-stop. Lu Zheng asked him, "What tricks are you up to now?" Lu Shi's throat emitted a strange and heavy sound. He was like a trapped beast facing a desperate situation. His eyes were filled with red veins. He said word by word, "I'm Lu Shi." Lu Zheng couldn't be bothered to argue with this person. This lunatic Hua Yuan had really opened his eyes. He could put on a show in minutes without panting. "I'll never allow anyone to replace me." Every time he woke up, he was in a strange environment. He became a strange man, but others told him that Lu Shi was staying in Dongqing. How could that be possible? Someone must have secretly used sorcery to frame him. The one staying in Dongqing was the fake one. He had to find a way to regain his identity and let the world know that he was Lu Shi. Because Lu Zheng inadvertently revealed the truth, Lu Shi began to doubt himself, but his instinct to protect himself made him find a plausible excuse. Only then did his agitated emotions calm down. What Lu Zheng didn't know was that this Lu Shi in front of him was already imagining a big show. If he wanted to take back his identity, he had to stay awake and truly possess this body. He could not fall asleep from time to time and allow others to seize control. But how could this be achieved? Lu Shi thought for a moment and a cruel sneer appeared on his lips. He had to think of a way to get rid of those outsiders who had taken over the nest. As long as he had a normal body, he would have a chance to uncover the truth. Lu Zheng had originally come to kill Hua Yuan, but after this interruption, he was like a deflated balloon. He picked up the sword on the ground and left. Hua Yuan was a complete lunatic. Sooner or later, he would suffer the consequences of his actions. He had been too excited just now. If he had really killed Hua Yuan, he would most likely have lost his life as well. Not worth it. Although the external threat of the South Man was gone, Nanxing did not become peaceful. Instead, it was filled with the aura of an impending storm. In the Alliance army, An Shui had preserved his strength after the plague incident. Under Lu Zhang's planning and management, his strength continued to grow. On the other hand, the other feudal vassals had suffered heavy losses in the battle against the Southman. They had also lost many of their elites due to the plague. Soon, they were left far behind by Anshui. The difference in strength between the feudal vassals was so great that Anshui was not panicking. But those who had suffered heavy losses were on tenterhooks. After the alliance army divided up the spoils of war, they all found excuses to bring their troops home. From Anshui's attitude towards the Southman captives, it was obvious that he was not a good man. Hua Yuan, who was by his side, would also do anything to achieve his goals. If Anshui suddenly turned against them, none of them would be able to escape. They would be safer back at the base camp. Yang Tao also chose to leave at this time. Before they set off, Yan Lin suddenly sighed with emotion. Anshui is a wolf with wild ambitions. Yang Tao grabbed the reins and turned to look at Yan Lin. Will Anshui send troops to ambush us again? He won't ambush us, but it's hard to say for the others. Yan Lin said confidently, the alliance army destroyed the Southman. All the families contributed and lost countless soldiers. They are at their weakest right now. Anshui's troops are well preserved. He might not let go of this opportunity. Yang Tao was confused. Why? If Anshui really had such ambitions, why would he allow the families to leave with their troops? Yan Lin sighed. His friend was indeed naive. Truly naive and sweet. Don't be stupid for free. Did he even need to think about this? If Anshui attacks now, the families will gather their forces to defend themselves. One family may be weak, but with the combined strength of several families, Anshui will lose. Yan Lin said, if the families return with their troops, they won't be able to take care of each other. It will be easier for Anshui to take them down one by one. This way, not only could he eat away at the family's strength, but he could also take back the spoils of war. Based on Yan Lin's understanding of Anshui and the others, this was very likely. Yang Tao tensed up. So we have to be prepared for a sneak attack. Yan Lin shook his head and said, Anshui will attack the families, but he won't attack us. Yang Tao was surprised. Why? Yan Lin said, don't forget, Dongqing still has Lu Shi eyeing us. If our strength is damaged, who will defend him against Lu Shi? Anshui doesn't have a good relationship with the other feudal lords. When the plague broke out, he only warned us secretly. What does that mean? Isn't it because he's worried that our strength will be damaged and we won't be able to defend against Lu Shi's army? It's not hard to guess what he's thinking. Yang Tao was speechless. Was it really not hard to guess? Why couldn't he guess at all? Lu Shi? Yang Tao said, he's defeated all the feudal lords in Dongqing. Does he still have the energy to send troops? Yan Lin said, he has to send troops even if he doesn't have the energy. Nanxing is at a low point. If he doesn't send troops now, it will be difficult for him to do so in the future. Yang Tao was silent. Lu Shi controls Dongqing and the northern borderline. How can we defend against him? Yang Tao's family was not weak, but compared to Jiang Pengji's, it was not enough. He lacked confidence. After the incident in Nanman, Yang Tao was sometimes at a loss. A general success was built on thousands of dead bodies. It was good to win, but what if he lost? The thousands of soldiers who followed him would become piles of white bones. The land he had painstakingly managed would be invaded by the flames of war. The people who had finally settled down would become homeless again. That scene was unbearable to watch, and Yang Tao did not want to end up like that. Yan Lin was not worried. He said, let's form an alliance to defend against the enemy. An alliance? Who? Yang Tao's eyes were filled with these words. Chapter 1440. Yang Tao hesitated for a moment, feeling a little uncertain. Will the feudal lords of Zhongzhou be willing to get involved in this mess? He didn't know much about the situation in Zhongzhou and only knew a little. After all, Nanxing and Zhongzhou were very far apart. It would take at least half a year for information to travel back and forth. Why not? Yan Lin said confidently, among the feudal lords of Zhongzhou, the Nia family is the most powerful. They occupy the most fertile states and counties. They have long become a thorn in other people's eyes. This chaotic world was like rowing a boat against the current. If one did not advance, they would be pushed back. If they did not fight, they would be waiting for death. Based on the Nia clan's current military strength, they could still choose to defend for 3 to 5 years, but what about after that? Lu Shi was full of ambition. Even if she didn't provoke her, she would still covet the meat in other people's bowls. The Nia clan offended Lu Shi in the past. Based on that person's temperament, I'm afraid he hasn't forgotten. Yan Lin was aware that the Nia family seemed to be thriving, but it was not a carefree life. If the Nia clan did not work hard to strengthen themselves, then they could only watch helplessly as the enemy grew stronger and swallowed them up. Yang Tao asked, "Is Lu Shi that wild?" He had a good impression of Jiang Pengji. Although she was a straightforward and open-minded tomboy, she did not bite anyone she saw. Yan Lin didn't think so. When the outsiders were afraid of the northern borderline, only this person was secretly conserving his strength and building up his strength, taking advantage of the critical moment when the northern borderline's vitality was greatly weakened to launch an expedition. From this incident, it could be seen that Jiang Pengji was not only unruly, but also decisive and warlike. She would not let go of any opportunity to attack the enemy. To her, Nanxing was something she had to get. If the weak Yang Tao wanted to survive, he had no choice but to form an alliance with Zhongzhou. If she wasn't wild, how could the northern borderline have lost? Yan Lin said. She's the alpha wolf. There's no way she wouldn't be tempted by a bloody prey. If she misses this opportunity, when Nanxing recovers and Zhongzhou grows stronger, it will be difficult for her to expand again. The blood and tears of their predecessors told them that the path of multi-nation coexistence was not feasible, because human ambition was endless, and the conflict between nations was unavoidable. Only by accomplishing true unification could the world be at peace. With Jiang Pengji's temperament, it was impossible for her to satisfy Dongqing. For Jiang Pengji, this was the best opportunity to get involved in Nanxing. To the Nia family of Zhongzhou, wasn't this a good opportunity to expand their territory and get their hands on Dongqing? Right now, Yang Tao could be said to be struggling for survival. If he made good use of this opportunity, he might be the Oriole and become the final winner. Yan Lin's expression was solemn, and his brows were furrowed with worry. Yang Tao knew that his friend was under a lot of pressure, so he didn't disturb him. Yan Lin was sure that there were no ambushers, so Yang Tao wasn't worried that Shui would set up an ambush ahead. However, even though Yang Tao was relieved, the other allied forces were not. Just as Yan Lin had said, Shui was very ambitious. He took advantage of this rare opportunity to defeat all the feudal vassals one by one. Even though Lu Zheng had a conflict with Shui and had a personal grudge with Hua Yuan, he was still a person who could distinguish between public and private interests. Based on the temperament of the feudal vassals and their subordinates, Lv Zheng accurately predicted the route they would take back with their troops and set up an ambush in advance. The various feudal vassals also had capable people under them. They could see Shui's ambition and knew that this trip home would not be smooth, so they had long been on guard. The first few days were peaceful. They didn't even catch a single suspicious person, let alone an ambush. In the latter half of the journey, a few feudal vassals began to let their guard down, because they were only a day or two away from their territory. They didn't expect an ambush to appear at this time and catch them off guard. That bastard Shui. He went back on his word. After marching for several days, the army was exhausted. They had finally found a place to rest for the night, but the enemy just had to choose this time to launch a sneak attack. Blessings never come in pairs, and misfortunes never come alone. The speed at which the army collapsed was far faster than they had imagined. Only then did they realize that there was an enemy spy in the army. Send the letter quickly. Seeing that the army was collapsing, the feudal vassal made a prompt decision. He sent someone to deliver the news of Shui's sneak attack to his territory. It was obvious that the well-prepared enemy had a comprehensive plan to deal with it. After a night of fierce fighting, countless corpses were left behind. Their comrades who had fought side by side not long ago were either dead souls or captives. Things were far from over. According to Lu Zhang's arrangements, this group of people even stripped the captives of their armor and put it on themselves. Before the news reached the feudal vassals' territory, they used these clothes to disguise themselves as the soldiers of the feudal vassals, using this to trick the city gates. It would be best if they could trick the city gates, but if they couldn't, then they would attack by force. Relying on these methods, An Shui's army reaped great rewards, and news of victory came one after another. The same situation played out in different places. Lu Zhang stood behind the scenes and controlled everything, but the successive victories didn't make him smile. Why? He seemed to have been targeted by a lunatic who had lost his mind. What a surprise. Beside him, Hua Yuan, no, Lu Shi, revealed a look of admiration. He said to Lu Zhang, although these feudal vassals aren't very successful and don't have a large territory, they are very cunning. Some of them knew that An Shui might betray them and secretly changed the route of the army. Even the planted spies couldn't get this information out, but you know the route of the army like the back of your hand. If it wasn't for his ability to foresee the future, then Lu Zhang was relying on his incomparably precise judgment and analysis skills. Lu Zhang's expression changed slightly. He knew that Hua Yuan's problem of losing his mind was getting worse. In the past, he would occasionally act like an ordinary person, but in the past 2 days, he frequently called himself Lu Shi, and the duration of his behavior was also increasing. Lu Zhang didn't know if this was a good or bad thing. In any case, that savage, Gu Lin, didn't appear. It should be a good thing. When will Hua Yuan regain his senses? He's the Lord's right-hand man. He can't be absent at such a critical moment. Speaking of this, Lu Zhang got angry. He and Hua Yuan were like fire and water, and this was already known to everyone. Who would have thought that once Lu Shi appeared, he would come to his place every few days, making it seem like the two were on good terms. Even An Shui became suspicious. Who wouldn't be suspicious? Not long ago, the two had been fighting and killing each other with swords, but now they could coexist peacefully. Outsiders couldn't help but suspect that there was something fishy going on. I'm Hua Yuan now, Lu Shi said with a smile. Ever since he made his decision, Lu Shi began to pay attention to those outsiders who had occupied the nest of the doves. As expected, he found some clues. What surprised him was that there were more than one dove. He had secretly devoured the weakest one, and he still had to patiently plot against the rest. Lu Zhang felt a chill in his heart. He even had the illusion that this Lu Shi, Hua Yuan before him might be even more dangerous than the Gu Lin, Hua Yuan. What exactly do you want to do? Naturally, I want to take back everything that belongs to me. Lu Zhang was speechless. You're seriously ill. Why don't you call the doctor over to prescribe a few doses of medicine for you? Chapter 1441. Zhongzhou, Songzhou, Shiba City. Cough, 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 coughs spilled out from his throat. Niao Yang wanted to endure it, but a fishy smell surged up, causing him to feel nauseous. He covered his mouth with a handkerchief and coughed heavily. When he removed the handkerchief, the snow-white handkerchief was already stained with a glaring black-red blood. He was staring at the pool of blood in a daze when he heard footsteps coming from the corridor. Someone was approaching him from afar. Niao Yang subconsciously stuffed the handkerchief into his sleeve and lay back down. Come in. Niao Yang secretly wiped the remaining blood from the corner of his mouth. The maids waiting respectfully outside the room filed in and helped him wash up and change his clothes. After a simple breakfast, the maids brought up a dark medicinal concoction. The indescribable smell could be smelled from afar. Niao Yang was a person who was afraid of bitterness, but he knew he had to rely on this medicine to keep him alive. He had to pinch his nose and gulp it down. Zixuan has come to take the roll call? Niao Yang's complexion was not very good. His eyes were slightly sunken, and the dark circles under his eyes made him look very tired and listless. The maid said, "Military advisor Wei has been waiting outside since a quarter of an hour ago. In order not to disturb master, he did not send anyone to inform you." Niao Yang and Wei Dan not only had a master-servant relationship, but they were also close friends and had a close personal relationship. Knowing that Niao Yang's situation was not good, Wei Dan wanted to pack a bed to take care of Niao Yang. Niao Yang nodded and casually found an excuse to send the maid away. After she left, Niao Yang got up and took a lamp from the side, using the flame to burn the blood-stained handkerchief. He knew his body well. It looked fine on the surface, but it was weak on the inside. He did not know how much longer he could hold on. But a cold light flashed across Niao Yang's eyes. No matter how long he could hold on, he had to make old Master Nia die. If he died, this grandfather would not fully support Niao Yang's son and would most likely hand over Niao Yang's family business to his brothers of the same generation. Niao Yang was well aware of the Nia family's situation. If Niao Yang's son could not take power, the orphan and widow would only have a dead end. "Greetings, Lord." Wei Yong sat patiently and waited for a long time before Niao Yang arrived. Niao Yang's footsteps were unsteady and he still looked sickly. "Is there a need to be so courteous between us?" Niao Yang smiled and said, "Why are you here so early today? I received a few secret letters yesterday. I should have handed them to you earlier, but it was already late at night. I didn't dare to disturb you from your sweet dreams, so I could only come early this morning." With that, Wei Yong handed a few letters to Niao Yang. One is from Dongqing, and one is from Old Master. Dongqing? Could it be that Lu Shi is up to something again? As he spoke, he opened the seal with his slender fingers and took out the secret letter inside with 2 fingers. She really is a restless woman. After reading 10 lines at a glance, Niao Yang sighed with emotion. With such a daughter in the Lu family, why would they worry about not being able to prosper? Wei Yong reminded, Lu Shi declared independence before the war with Huang Song. In other words, Lady Lu would not be able to gain any advantage from Jianghu. If Lu Shi's heart was on Lady Lu's side, they would not have to worry about prosperity for the next 100 years. Lu Shi is an amazing woman, but Lady Lu's chicken nest can't keep her phoenix, Niao Yang said calmly. She's used to looking for trouble. It's only been more than a year since the war with Huang Song, and she can't help but rub her palms together and make a move on Nanxing. She's not afraid of being choked. Wei Yong was surprised. Was that the content of the secret letter? If that was the case, Nanxing's alliance won? Niao Yang said, according to the informant's report, Nanxing's alliance won a Pyrrhic victory. Is there any news from Nanxing recently? Wei Yong replied, there's a new batch of news recently. Niao Yang's throat was a little itchy, and he suppressed the urge to cough for a while. He did not want to cough up blood in front of Wei Yong. Go and bring them over. After sending Wei Yong away, Niao Yang covered his handkerchief and coughed twice. This time, there was no blood on it. Not long after, Wei Yong came over with a stack of books. Niao Yang read them according to the time. Because Nanxing and Zhongzhou were far apart, news would be sent once every half a month. There was a strong lag. For example, the content in Niao Yang's hands was actually old news from more than a month ago. Based on this old news and the news from Dongqing, Niao Yang had a rough understanding of Nanxing's situation. After reading it, Niao Yang smiled and said, she really picked a good time. Nanxing is determined to win. Nanxing's military strength was empty, but Jianghu had been recuperating for more than a year. Their morale was high, so there was a lot to gain from going to Nanxing. The two of them slowly walked to the great universal geographical map. Looking at the beautiful mountains and rivers on the map, Niao Yang felt a sense of desolation. Wei Yong said, Lu Shi's next target is Yang Tao. After beating up Yang Tao, it would be in Shui's turn. The longer Yang Tao held out, the more time Shui would have to recuperate and recover his strength. Niao Yang said, looking at Yang Tao's family history in Nanxing, he, or the people around him are not people who like to resign themselves to death. They most likely work hard to survive in a hopeless situation. Zixuan, guess what Yang Tao will do to revive the entire chessboard? Wei Yong pondered for a while. I'm afraid Yang Tao's family alone is no match for Lu Shi. Not to mention a year, I'm afraid they won't even last half a year. The only way out is to form an alliance. Wei Yong said, Yang Tao has just finished working with Shui. Looking at the latter's actions, he most likely won't get involved in this chaotic battle. It's possible that he'll hide behind the scenes and be the Oriole. From the looks of it, if Yang Tao wants to deal with Lu Shi, he'll most likely choose to send someone to persuade the Lord to form an alliance. After all, Jianghu only had a few neighboring enemies. Niao Yang said, most likely so. Wei Yong said, if Yang Tao really sends someone over, will the Lord agree? Niao Yang sighed and said, do I still have a choice? If he allowed Lu Shi to grow, he would only be raising a mortal enemy for himself. It's better to think of a way to nip her in the bud before she fully matures. If Yang Tao sends someone over, the alliance must be agreed. Wei Yong nodded and agreed with Niao Yang's point of view. However, Wei Yong would never have guessed that Niao Yang was also making arrangements for his death. After finishing the first secret letter, Niao Yang opened the second secret letter. This was from his grandfather. There weren't many words written on the letter. It could be read in one glance. Wei Yong asked nervously, what instructions does the old master have? Niao Yang said, grandfather still doesn't agree. He says that Dalong is still too young and isn't suitable to be appointed as the successor so early. Wei Yong's face turned green when he heard this. He gritted his teeth and said, is the old master sincerely trying to make the Lord unhappy? Niao Yang lowered his eyes and said, grandfather has been awe-inspiring all his life. If he's nearing his twilight years and his grandson seizes power and makes him a mere figurehead, he definitely won't feel comfortable. The Nia family was second to none in Zhongzhou. Their heritage wasn't something that ordinary gentry families could compare to. Chapter 1442. The Nia family's situation was similar to the Su family's. The Su brothers, Su Bei and Su Fei, fought to the death. It was all because the grandfather favored the youngest grandson, causing the eldest grandson and the second eldest grandson. The Nia family's situation was even more complicated. Old Master Nia was healthy, and the few sons he gave birth to were well fed and drunk. Not only that, but they were also passionate about producing children and contributing valuable strength to the Nia family's population. Niao Yang's father was only the old master's fifth son. Originally, he had no possibility of inheriting the family business. Who asked the old master to control the Nia family for so many years? He refused to retire at such an old age. On one hand, he suppressed his sons, and on the other, he nurtured a few promising grandchildren. Old Master Nia had always disapproved of the eldest legitimate son's inheritance. Now that he had such an attitude, his other sons were restless. People's hearts wavered, and they began to think about things they shouldn't. At first, it was just a small quarrel. Later, it escalated into a plot to murder the younger generation. As the eldest legitimate son of the fifth branch, Niao Yang was also the most outstanding and dazzling descendant of the Nia family. He received much attention from the outside world. The few uncles saw that old Master Nia often praised Niao Yang and seemed to have the intention of handing over the family business to the fifth branch. Soon, they could not sit still. Niao Yang was poisoned. The poison was not strong, but over the years, the body would become weaker and weaker. If not for the trip to Dongqing's Zhangzhou to deal with Jianghu, Wei Ren would have asked his younger brother, Wei Ci, to take his pulse. Niao Yang would have to wait for his death to find out that someone had poisoned him. The mastermind did it so covertly and even cut off all the clues. Even Niao Yang could not find the real culprit who poisoned him. However, he was sure that the culprit was definitely related to his uncles. After returning to Zhongzhou, Niao Yang purged the people around him and thought of ways to seize power. At the same time, he overtook his grandfather and took control of the Nia family. The process was naturally difficult and dangerous, but Niao Yang was very clear that if he did not do so, the Nia family would sooner or later be destroyed by his uncle's infighting. As there was too much poison in his body and Nia Liang did not meditate and recuperate, his body was deteriorating year by year. As a precaution, he planned to let his eldest son inherit the Nia family. As long as the title was established, his uncles would not dare to act rashly. However, old Master Nia still bore a grudge against Nia Liang's actions and refused to admit Nia Liang as his successor. If that was the case, once Nia Liang passed away, facing a group of uncles who were like wolves and tigers, how could a young child defend himself? Wouldn't he be eaten alive by a group of uncles and his grandfather who was old but not old at heart? If there was anything Nia Liang couldn't let go of now, it would probably be his children and the Nia clan. But, the guards seemed to want to say something else. Nia Liang smiled bitterly. For the sake of the Nia family, we can't let Lu Shi take over Nanxing no matter what. He knew that he didn't have long to live. If he died, the Nia family would kill each other for power and profit. In the end, Jiang Pengji would benefit from it. If Jiang Pengji was a benevolent person, Nia Liang would not be too worried. The Nia family could still rely on their family background to stand strong even if they withdrew from the fight for hegemony. What was disappointing was that not only was Jiang Pengji not kind, but she was also a person who could not tolerate sand in her eyes. If the Nia family stayed in her hands, they would be played to death sooner or later. Due to various considerations, Nia Liang could only bite the bullet and continue planning to pave the way for the family. Only by eradicating the hidden dangers would the Nia clan not be scattered in the upcoming chaotic times. If my lord insists on this, then I won't be able to object. It's just that if we send troops to Lu Shi, I'm afraid that someone will object. Nia Liang and Jiang Pengji's situations were different. Both of them came from gentry families and had rich family backgrounds. However, Jiang Pengji broke away from the shackles of the Lu family and became independent. No one could interfere with her decisions. Nia Liang controlled the Nia family and borrowed the power of the clan. He was still more or less under the control of others. Even if Nia Liang won over many loyal strategists and generals, he still couldn't get rid of the influence of his family. Nia Liang said, "I'll consider this matter carefully. If someone is really stubborn and continues to block the way." He paused. His eyes carried a chill that sent chills down one's spine. If the saplings want to grow well, people will have to trim the extra branches. If the uncles of the Nia family were still so unreasonable, Nia Liang might as well inflict the hardships he had suffered on them. They still wanted to fight? They would all follow him to the Yama palace and slowly fight. Since they were all scourges alive, it was better to die peacefully. Perhaps the Nia family could turn their misfortune into fortune. Nia Liang didn't want to do this if he had a choice. Wei Yong, who was at the side, didn't know that his good friend had made a shocking decision. At that moment, someone outside reported that the eldest Lang Jun had come to pay his respects. Nia Liang's face relaxed a lot. Nia Liang's eldest son was about to turn 20. His appearance had taken the advantages of his father and mother. He was tall and handsome and had the style of Nia Liang when he was young. Behind the eldest son was a kind-looking young man who looked like the eldest son's tail. The tail was none other than the son of Nia Liang's cousin. He didn't have much of a presence and had a cowardly temperament. Nia Liang also didn't want his son to be alone, so he was happy to see someone of the same age that he could play with. "Father, why is your face so pale?" The eldest son paid his respects to his father and bowed to his father-in-law, Wei Yong. Nia Liang said, "I was busy last night and woke up early this morning. It's normal to be pale. Don't worry, my son." The eldest son said a few more words of concern. Seeing Nia Liang frown, he stood up and left. From the beginning to the end, the kind-looking nephew didn't get a word in, but he wasn't angry. Little did he know that after the two left, a cold voice rang in his ears. "Nia Liang doesn't have much vitality left. He only has half a year left to live." "Half a year? But he seems to want to help his son get the throne. If he succeeds, won't my previous efforts be in vain?" The Emperor's assistance system selects the person with destiny. If you don't have a chance to succeed, will I choose you? Don't worry. Yang, why are you in a daze? Nie Liang's eldest son stopped to wait for his cousin when he saw that his cousin didn't move. Nothing. I'm just a little worried about uncle. Not only does he look worse than before, but he also lost a lot of weight. Nie Liang's eldest son said, you're quite close to father. The other brothers don't care about father, but it's good that they didn't say anything behind his back. It was because Nie Yang was so good that he liked to help this cousin. After a while, you and I will be crowned. I wonder what character will father and the others choose. The crowning ceremony was very important for men in ancient times. Choosing a character was also a part of it. After crowning, it meant that one had become an adult. Nie Yang wasn't valued by his parents because of his mediocre aptitude. He didn't even mention such an important day as the crowning ceremony. If Nie Yang didn't remember, Nie Yang would probably be embarrassed. Nie Yang smiled. Anything is fine. Uncle's literary talent is brilliant, not inferior to a great scholar. Are you still worried about not having a good character? That's true. The two of them went to the family school to study together. Nie Liang's eldest son walked in front while Nie Yang was always one step behind. Chapter 1443. Nie Yang did not know who this self-proclaimed emperor assistant system in his mind was. Was it a human or a ghost? Was it a god or a demon? But he knew that its origins were not simple. It saw through Nie Yang's ambitions, and Nie Yang needed its help to realize his ambitions. The two hit it off and worked well together. Nie Yang wanted to stand out and control the Nie family. He wanted to use the Nie family to soar to the throne. However, this goal was too difficult. It would be difficult to achieve without the help of allies. Can you really help me become an emperor? Nie Yang pondered the authenticity of these words. He looked gentle and generous. Others thought he was weak and easy to bully, but this thing saw through his ambitions. It's true. The dragon energy on you is the richest in Zhongzhou. You will definitely become a hegemon in the future. Nie Yang laughed. Although he was ambitious, he did not have much hope. The old master of the Nie family was not dead yet. His sons were still alive and kicking. They were all part of the reincarnation brigade. Who knew how many sons he had? Nie Yang was only one of the 40 or 50 great-grandchildren. How could he stand out from so many people? Unless those who stood in his way were all dead. Those who survived could not compete with him. You're so confident. I don't really believe you. Nie Yang met the system when he was 9. He had been wary of it for the first few years. After spending time with it and it had helped Nie Yang a lot, he slowly began to trust it. The two had worked together for more than 10 years. Nie Yang trusted this friend more and more. As a nobody in the Nie family, Nie Yang knew one thing. If he did not compete, he was destined to be stepped on and never be able to rise again. Since the system said that he had the true Dragon Emperor energy, his future was limitless. Why not fight for his future? If Nie Yang wanted to rise, he first had to help the third branch of the Nie family stand out. Then, it would be much easier to deal with the others. After the system's reminder, Nie Yang knew that his uncle Nie Liang was a talent that could revitalize the Nie family. At the same time, he was also a stumbling block. As long as Nie Liang was in the fifth branch, the third branch's chances of winning were slim. Nie Yang said, if Nie Liang is weak and does not have long to live, will he not be an obstacle? The system gasped. You want to assassinate Nie Liang? This was his uncle. Nie Yang smiled and said, didn't you tell me that Nie Liang is a short-lived ghost and is destined to not live long? But I see that he is in good health, without any illness or disaster, which doesn't seem to match what you told me. I'm not taking his life right away, I'm just letting him follow his destiny. The system did it cleanly. It was 2 years after Nie Liang realized that he had been poisoned and the poison had seeped into his bones. To be honest, Nie Yang was quite afraid that Nie Liang would find out about it. At this moment, he wasn't a match for Niao Yang at all, and once he was dragged out, his life would be over. Who knew that the system's abilities were beyond imagination? Even Niao Yang couldn't find many clues. Niao Yang's plan became even bolder. In order to make everyone believe that he was gentle and harmless, Niao Yang had worn a false mask for many years, almost fooling himself. He was often bullied by his brothers, and no matter how badly he was bullied, he didn't know how to fight back, and was even used as a knife. However, at the same time of disguise, he also needed to build connections, and those hedonistic sons were the easiest to fool. For example, Niao Yang had once befriended the grandson of an elder of the Nia clan. He was an out-and-out hedonistic son of a rich family, unambitious, conceited, stupid, and easily manipulated. The thing he hated the most was that someone was better than him. What did this hedonistic son do that was out of line? Under Niao Yang's instigation, he purposely caused trouble for a young scholar at a gathering. That young scholar didn't have any background, but he was extremely talented and didn't know how to hide his talent, boasting of his intelligence. In the end, he angered the hedonistic son, and because of his words, the hedonistic son took revenge and broke his leg. Not only that, the hedonistic son didn't let it go, and colluded with the magistrate's office to frame the young scholar with a groundless crime, and he was sent to the border for 2 years. In the end, the scholar's body was weak and couldn't take it, and he died of a cold halfway through. The young scholar died, and it was said that the scholar's mother and wife died of illness not long after, leaving only an old man and a child. He was a cold and heartless person, and Niao Yang didn't pay attention to where the grandfather and grandson went. He only vaguely remembered that the young scholar's surname was Sun, and his name was Lai. So what if he was talented? If he wanted to fly before his wings were strong, sooner or later, he would be broken and fall to his death. Over the years, the Emperor's assistance system taught Niao Yang a lot of tricks, and Niao Yang also used the system to do many small tricks. All the plans were going well, but who would have thought that Niao Yang would become the only anomaly? Niao Yang, who had never fought for power, suddenly rose up, imprisoned old Master Nia, forcefully seized the family's power, and made a few of his uncles a figurehead. His actions were unbelievably fast, and by the time Niao Yang reacted, the overall situation had already been settled. Niao Yang was in power, and the 5 branches rose in status. Niao Yang's eldest son also became a phoenix, and his value doubled. This change made Niao Yang panic, but he didn't give himself away. Instead, he pitifully won Niao Yang's eldest son's favor. After a few years of getting along, the two of them were closer than blood brothers, and even Niao Yang let down his guard against him. Just a little more, Niao Yang leaned against the pavilion, and Niao Yang's eldest son was bathed in the sunlight, holding a book and memorizing it. "What do you plan to do?" Niao Yang said. Niao Yang isn't someone easy to deal with. When he was alive, I would definitely arouse his suspicions if I made too many moves. The safest way is to outlive him. According to Niao Yang's temperament, he couldn't do anything to his uncles when he was alive, so he might take them away before he died to clear the obstacles for his son. This way, it's equivalent to helping me clear my competitors. I can't beat Niao Yang, but can't I beat Niao Yang's son? Niao Yang himself is full of schemes, but the son he raised is so innocent and gullible. What a pity. To tell you the truth, this is called being of the same origin. Niao Yang glanced at it, and he almost laughed. Being of the same origin? Does it mean that Niao Yang is also innocent and gullible? The system said, in a sense, Niao Yang is indeed quite gullible. His weakness is too obvious, and he's also stubborn. Niao Yang was speechless. After a while, he said, "What you said makes sense." The system asked again, "What if Niao Yang didn't drag you down with him at the last minute?" Niao Yang's gaze was slightly cold. "Do you know how to frame someone? Dead people don't speak." Niao Yang has to take the blame even if he doesn't want to. Niao Yang was chatting happily with the system when Niao Yang's eldest son, who was under the sun, called out. "Ah Yang, what's so interesting about this pavilion? Come to my place, the courtyard is beautiful in spring." Niao Yang said, "I don't really like it. It's easy to tan. The sun isn't hot, so how can you tan? You're a man, not a lady. Why are you afraid of the dark? Chapter 1444. Pfft, Yang Tao was drinking. When he heard his subordinate's report, he spat it out. Fortunately, no innocent people were involved. Cough, cough, cough. Are you sure? Lu Shi really used this excuse to send troops. Yang Tao coughed until tears came out. He didn't expect Jiang Pengji to be so cunning. Even the excuse for sending troops was different. Last year, the Tao family rebelled. They sent imitations to Jiangzhou and Wanzhou to sow discord, trying to make the two feudal vassals bristle with anger. The result was gratifying. Yang Tao was not in Jiangzhou but at the front line in Nanxing. Jiang Pengji was clever and didn't fall for it. Her scheme was fruitless. Not only did it cost the whole family, but it also gave Jiang Pengji a ready-made excuse. She was worried that she had no reason to find trouble with Yang Tao. It's enough to send troops. They don't care what the excuse is. His wife, Yan Shuxian, sat next to Yang Tao with the baby in her arms. They enjoyed their rare time as husband and wife. Yang Tao said, "I'm just surprised that Lu Shi put in so much effort to send troops." The baby in Yan Shuxian's arms pounced on Yang Tao. He smiled and took the soft little guy. He couldn't get enough of kissing him. "Husband, do you think my brother's trip will be fruitful?" Yan Shuxian was very worried. It was a long journey to Zhongzhou. She didn't know if her brother, Yan Lin, could successfully convince the feudal vassals of Zhongzhou to form an alliance. Yang Tao said, "Xiaoyang never disappoints. This time is no exception. If he says he's confident, then he's confident." Although Jiang Pengji said she wanted to send troops to war, the preparatory work was very long. Yang Tao was not anxious at all. "Wife, look, the child is still sucking my finger." Yang Tao was playful. Seeing the child holding his finger and sending it to his mouth, he smiled and didn't move it away. Instead, he looked at the baby with relish. Yan Shuxian's mouth twitched. She didn't expect her husband to be so childish. She quickly slapped his hand away. "You're sweaty and stinky. Aren't you afraid that the child will eat something bad?" Yang Tao laughed. "The child doesn't dislike it. He seems to like it. He'll definitely be a great general in the future. Your brain is full of fighting and killing." Yan Shuxian said in a light tone, "I don't like it." Yang Tao had lost his external brain, but he still had to do his work. At most, his efficiency would be lower. Yan Lin knew that in his absence, no one could control the Lord. Therefore, he chose a gentle and generous temporary brain for Yang Tao. Yang Tao was a pure and kind person. If you were to be unreasonable, he would be unreasonable. If you were to be soft, he would not be able to be fierce at all. Therefore, even though Yan Lin was gone, Yang Tao was still under the control of the temporary brain. After teasing the baby, Yang Tao went back to work. There was a pile of information about Nanxing on the table. He casually flipped through it and sighed. Xiao Yang's plans are truly flawless. And Shui's wild ambition really can't hold back. The allied army of Nanxing had completely collapsed. And Shui defeated the feudal vassals one by one, swallowing them up one by one and expanding rapidly. Everyone in Yang Tao's tent panicked when they saw this. This was a good opportunity. Why didn't the Lord jump out and snatch a piece of the pie from Shui? Shui is ambitious. If he doesn't have Lu Zheng by his side to assist him, I'm afraid he won't be able to achieve anything great. Yang Tao muttered, "It's a pity that Lu Zheng is casting pearls before swine. This Shui isn't a wise ruler. He can only share the hardships but not the joys." Shui had hurt Lu Zheng's heart time and time again. The conflict was getting deeper and deeper. If it exploded one day, Lu Zheng would be devastated. The temporary brain said, "Everyone has their own fate." Yang Tao said, "I don't believe in fate." On the other side, because the information was outdated. When Jiang Pengji found out that Yan Lin had secretly gone to Zhongzhou, she wasn't in a hurry to stop him. You want to fight 2 against 1 again? Jiang Pengji said. How long has Zhangzhou been resting? Wei Ci laughed. The Nia family of Zhongzhou are not of one mind. It's not impossible for the Lord to fight 1 against 2. Jiang Pengji frowned. She said, if Zhongzhou gets involved. We have an abundance of troops, but our rations will be very tight. It's better to end the battle quickly. If we are delayed, the situation will be bad. At the end of the day, fighting a war is a job of burning food. Wei Ci said, why not wait for the autumn harvest? Zhongguang has made great progress in his research on fertilizers. They will be used for this year's spring plowing. Jiang Pengji said, yes, I know. Before they could say much, Jiang Pengji received a booklet. It was signed by Sun Wen. Zidao? Jiang Pengji was puzzled. Ever since Sun Wen entered her camp, apart from the battle at the northern borderline, he had been rooted in the governance and construction of the northern borderline. He usually kept a low profile. He was obsessed with Sun Wen. Other than his grandson Lan Lan and his work, he didn't care about anything else. Suddenly receiving a booklet at this time meant that there was something urgent. Wei Ci said, maybe he has a request. Jiang Pengji opened the booklet and asked, what request? After reading the booklet, she knew what Sun Wen was asking for. He wanted to apply for a job transfer. He's doing well in the northern borderline. Why does he suddenly want to apply for a transfer? Jiang Pengji was surprised. Wei Ci said, Zidao, should be for the Nia family of Zhongzhou. If he hears that the Nia family wants to participate in the war, he won't be able to sit still. For Sun Wen, the Nia family was the culprit who caused his family to be ruined and killed. He had to bury his children before him. Jiang Pengji understood and said with a smile, then agree to it. It's time to let Zidao have a peace of mind. When she was done with the matters at hand, the sky outside was already dark. Jiang Pengji turned off the streaming room on time and asked Wei Ci to accompany her for her meal. I don't think I asked you about Zidao's past. Wei Ci said, my lord, you really didn't ask. Jiang Pengji asked, did he have a grudge with the Nia family in the past? Wei Ci's expression changed instantly. He was at a loss for words. No, Zidao was an important member of the Nia family and was highly regarded. I don't know what went wrong in this life, but the Nia family actually hurt Zidao's only son. Not only did they break his leg, but they also caused him to die on the way to exile. This also caused a series of chain reactions. Sun Wen's wife passed away due to grief, and his daughter-in-law also passed away. Only the grandfather and grandson were left in the family. If Sun Wen hadn't fled to Dongqing with his grandson, Jiang Pengji wouldn't have been able to find him. This is called the butterfly effect, Jiang Pengji said. Maybe our appearance changed his fate. Wei Ci couldn't be sure. Anyway, it wasn't a bad thing for his lord. Sun Wen received permission. After completing the handover work, he immediately rushed to Xiangyang district in Wanzhou. Sun Lan saw his grandfather at home after school. He suddenly thought he was dreaming. As usual, he flew into his grandfather's arms. Unexpectedly, his grandfather, who was usually amiable, had a solemn look on his face. Grandfather? Sun Lan looked puzzled. He took the initiative to hold his grandfather's hand and found that his fingers were trembling. Lan Lan. Sun Wen said, do you miss grandmother, father, and mother? Sun Lan hung his head and said, I do, but I can't, because grandfather will be even more upset. Sun Wen said, soon, grandfather will personally behead the enemy who killed them. He will peel off the skin and light the sky lantern with daylily. Chapter 1445. Peeling daylily? Lighting the sky lantern? Sun Wen's voice was not loud, but the murderous intent in his words pierced through the eardrums. Sun Lan could not help but tremble. Grandpa? he revealed a somewhat fearful expression. He was too unfamiliar with this sinister and sharp grandfather. Sun Wen restrained his aura and sighed softly as he stroked his grandson's long hair. This child had not yet reached adulthood. He could not be at ease. Sun Lan said nervously, "Grandpa, didn't you say that the enemy is from the Nye family?" "The Nye family?" "Grandpa, don't mess around. You're my only relative." Grandpa and grandson had depended on each other for so many years. Compared to revenge, Sun Lan hoped that his grandfather could live to a ripe old age. This was more important than anything else. Lan, you're not a child anymore. You're a young man now. Sun Wen said earnestly, "If there weren't any major changes in the family, your father and mother would have found a wife for you and arranged a marriage. When the wife reaches marriageable age, you'll be crowned an adult." Sun Lan blushed. He really did not think that much. "Grandpa knows that you're kind. If possible, what's wrong with being simple? But birth, old age, sickness, and death, no matter if you're a noble or a commoner, no one can escape this ending. Grandpa doesn't know how long these old bones of mine can accompany you and help you. When Grandpa is gone, what will happen to Grandpa's Lan? You have to know what kind of world this is. It's a chaotic world now. The feudal lords are fighting with each other, and the common people are ants. It's true that the Lord is powerful, but the world is unpredictable. Who can predict what the future will be like? How can Grandpa be at ease?" "Grandpa, don't say that. You'll definitely live to a ripe old age." Sun Lan said with a smile, "I won't let you down." Sun Wen laughed. "Grandpa also wants to live to a ripe old age. Not only do I want to see Lan get married, but I also want to see you have a group of children." Sun Lan had been well-fed and well-nourished all these years. He was at the age of growing taller, and the baby fat on his face had gradually disappeared, adding some youthfulness to his appearance. In time, he would become the dream man of many girls in the boudoir. Then the Nye family. Sun Lan's pair of black grape-like eyes were filled with anticipation. Sun Wen said bluntly, "Our Lord intends to mobilize troops against Nanqing's Yang Tao. Yang Tao has sent people to seek an alliance with Zhongzhao's Nye family. Grandfather has rested long enough in the northern state these past few years. Even his bones have gotten lazy. It's time for him to come out and stretch his muscles, lest others look down on him." Sun Lan said, "Who dares to look down on Grandpa? Besides, it's so hard to go to war, and Grandpa is getting old. Just the long march alone was torturous enough for an old man who was approaching his 50s to follow the army." Sun Lan could be considered as the first batch of students of the Golden Scale Academy. Currently, the content of her studies was getting more and more difficult, and more practical. The teachers of the academy often offered military and political courses. Military cases from ancient times to the present were picked out one by one and used as teaching materials to discuss and learn with the students. Sun Lan studied very hard, and her grades were basically in the top 10. Occasionally, Sun Wen would talk to him about the situation in the outside world. He understood what he meant and had his own thoughts. There will definitely be a battle between the Nye family and the Lord. Grandfather won't be able to sit still when his enemies come knocking on his door. The old man was old, but he was not so old that he could not move. The reason why I volunteered to be transferred back was not only to avenge your grandmother and parents, but also for you." Sun Lan said dejectedly, "Grandfather dotes on me, and always plans for me, but I also hope that Grandfather can." Sun Wen felt that he did not make himself clear enough, and explained, "Grandfather sees that you are close to the eldest daughter of Qiguan Wenjing. Qiguan Rang is the Lord's confidant, and you lost your pride when you were young, so your status is much lower than his. Since ancient times, marriage is about matching families. If Grandfather doesn't fight for you, do you want to rely on yourself? When you work hard to climb up, Qiguan Jinghui's daughter can even call you uncle." Sun Lan's face turned red, as if he had applied a thick layer of rouge. Sun Wen looked at him and said with a smile, "Tell Grandfather honestly, do you like Qiguan Wenjing's daughter?" Sun Lan was extremely shy, and he timidly moved closer to his grandfather's ear and whispered, I like her. She's very pretty, and she's a good person. Sun Wen took the opportunity to say, if you like her, not only will grandfather have to work hard for you, but you have to work hard too. Sun Lan said innocently, isn't it all about fate? There was a saying in the books that a marriage of 1,000 miles was linked by a single thread. Wouldn't they be able to tie the knot if they liked each other? The corner of Sun Wen's mouth twitched. His grandson was more innocent than he thought. Fate? Even if your fate with Qiguan Jinghui is as thick as your thigh, do you believe that Qiguan Rang will take a knife and chop your fate into pieces if you are not worthy of her? Which father would be willing to hand over his beautiful daughter to a son-in-law who is inferior in every aspect? Qiguan Rang did not easily offend people, but when it came to his daughter's marriage, this person was as difficult to deal with as a hedgehog. If Sun Lan did not have a bit of ability, he would not be able to surpass Qiguan Rang. Sun Wen had been too low-key these years. Even though he had made great achievements in governing Bay State, northern borderline, his sense of existence was not as good as a few young people who were active in the front lines. He had tried to sound out Qiguan Rang, but the other party did not say anything and only responded with a cold snort. Sun Wen had an idea. Sun Lan tugged at his sleeves and said pitifully, I'm not that bad. Sun Wen said, of course I'm not bad, but I'm still far from Qiguan Wenjing standards. He won't give in so easily. If they got married in the future and Sun Lan still had such a soft temperament, it would be strange if Qiguan Rang would treat him well. If Sun Lan did not fancy Qiguan Jinghui, Sun Wen would not have worked so hard. If he worked harder now, he would be less difficult when he proposed to Qiguan Rang in the future. Sun Lan was speechless. He felt a little hopeless. After a while, Sun Wen asked him, Lan Lan, do you want to follow Grandpa and train with the army? Military life was the best way to hone people. He did not expect Sun Lan's temperament to change drastically, but at least he could be more resolute. Sun Lan pointed at herself in surprise. Can I do it? He was still a student of the Golden Scale Academy. Would the headmaster let him go? Sun Wen said, it's naturally possible for grandfather to beg the Lord. But when we get to the army camp, Grandpa won't be able to take care of you at all times. The army camp is not like home. You have to be mentally prepared for whatever difficulties you might encounter and suffer. Don't complain about being tired. Sun Lan shook his head and said, I'm not afraid of suffering. After the conversation between grandfather and grandson, Sun Lan could not sleep that night. The next day, he went to the academy and could not help but tell Qiguan Jinghui everything. Of course, he did not say that he liked her or that Grandpa wanted her to be the Sun family's granddaughter-in-law. He only said that he was going to follow the army for the sake of training. Qiguan Jinghui said, why do you suddenly want to go to the army camp? Sun Lan said embarrassedly, maybe Grandpa thinks that I'm too soft and can't stand up. It's good to go to the army camp and see the world. Qiguan Jinghui asked him, what about the academy's curriculum? Chapter 1446. Qiguan Jinghui said, marching to war is not child's play. You have to go through all kinds of barren hills and unruly rivers. Can your body handle it? Sun Lan's equestrian archery was not very good. His level was below average, and his physique was also weak. Marching to war could really kill people. Grandpa sent me to the military camp to gain experience. Most of the time, I will be a clerk and help out. He won't let me carry a sword to the battlefield to kill the enemy. It's not that dangerous. Sun Lan smiled shyly. There is still a long time before the war. I will find a martial arts master to learn more. Qiguan Jinghui smiled. There is no need to be so troublesome. I can practice with you. The Golden Scale Academy was divided into male and female classes. The morning classes were the same, but the afternoon classes were different. The boys learned equestrian archery, while the girls learned physical training and needlework. Generally, the former was emphasized. The needlework level only needed to be at the level of showing a purse. As for physical training, many people's understanding was superficial. They all thought that it was a dance that was mainly for watching and training. Sun Lan was no exception. In the end, Sun Lan's sword was knocked out of his hand for the 10th time. The pain made his eyes red. Qiguan Jinghui's sword was not only powerful, flexible, and fast. Before he could blink, the sword was already close. Not only that, he also found that the other party's strength was terrifying. It completely subverted his inherent impression of a little girl. But Jinghui looked so delicate and small, maybe Grandpa was right. Very painful? Look at you, your eyes are already watering. She put down the wooden sword and went forward to grab his hand. Qiguan Jinghui carefully examined his red palm. She felt a little guilty. She practiced too much with her classmates and the female soldiers and martial arts masters. She forgot to be careful. Sun Lan shyly withdrew his hand and unnaturally covered the area between his thumb and index finger with his sleeve. The skin that was touched by her was hot. No, I didn't sleep well last night. I'm a little sleepy now. It's not that I want to cry because of the pain. Okay, I'll believe you. Qiguan Jinghui did not suspect anything. Coincidentally, a maid brought dinner to the two of them. Mother and two younger sisters, have you eaten? Before eating, she casually asked her mother and younger sister. The ancients did not have safe contraceptives. Qiguan Rang and his wife loved children. Qiguan Jinghui gave birth to 2 more girls. Currently, there was still one in her stomach. Qiguan Jinghui hoped that it would be a younger brother. This was because she had overheard the maid say that her father was middle-aged and did not have a male heir. Madame did not allow Rujuan to marry into her family, so he was under a lot of pressure. Growing up in this family, Qiguan Jinghui didn't feel the importance of having a male heir. When she learned about the customs of the outside world, she wasn't so sure. Even though her parents had a good relationship with each other and there was no conflict between them, Qiguan Jinghui still hoped to have a younger brother so that her mother's pressure would be less. Outside, there were many examples of the legal wife not being able to give birth to a son of the first wife, and the husband taking in Rujuan. She didn't want to have an eyesore between her parents. Even if she couldn't give birth to a younger brother, it didn't matter. In the future, she would set up a female household to look for a husband. She definitely wouldn't tarnish her father's reputation. Little did they know, Qiguan Rang hoped that his wife's child would be a princess. After all, he had made a wish for a dozen daughters. Sun Lan and Qiguan Jinghui were about the same age. As a boy, Sun Lan should be taller, but that was not the case in reality. In the past 6 months, Qiguan Jinghui had grown very quickly. When the two of them stood together, Sun Lan was still half a head shorter than her. However, the elders said that girls grew fast at this age. In another 2 years, it would be Sun Lan's turn to grow taller. He definitely wouldn't be short. Sun Lan was relieved. He didn't want to be a dwarf. After the meal and tea, Qiguan Jinghui suddenly asked, "Did Mr. Sun give you a courtesy name?" Sun Lan replied, "I haven't turned 20 yet. It's still too early to give me a courtesy name." Because of the ways of the world, many people had a courtesy name without being crowned. Sun Lan was still too young, so Sun Wen hadn't given him a name yet. Why did Jinghui suddenly ask about this? A few days ago, I heard Changxing call him Brother Rongli. After asking, I found out that it was a courtesy name given by Elder Fengyi. Fengyi, courtesy name Rongli? Sun Lan was looking forward to it. What courtesy name would his grandfather give him? He was deep in thought when Jinghui said, "Last night, I heard father and mother talking. It seems that Fengyi is going to be engaged to Changxing." Sun Lan was supporting his chin with his hand. When he heard this, he almost slipped. Engaged? How old is Changxing? Fengyi was a little older than Sun Lan. It was normal for him to be engaged, but his partner was too young. The two families are happy to see it happen. There's nothing bad about it. Engagement isn't marriage. At least it has to wait until Changxing reaches the age of 15. By then, Fengyi will be an adult. Qiguan Jinghui was not surprised. After all, Feng Yi had a good reputation. A group of elders also thought highly of him. Even Feng Jin couldn't find fault with him. The two families should be engaged first. If there were any changes in the process, it wouldn't be a big deal to cancel the engagement. Sun Lan said embarrassedly, I just think it's too early. Jinghui said, it's most likely true. Didn't you notice that Changxing's name on her nameplate has changed? Sun Lan naturally didn't notice. Changxing's original nameplate was Feng Changxing, but now it was changed to Feng Yu. Changxing was used as a courtesy name. If the two families wanted to be engaged, although the process was not as complicated as marriage, it still required the names of both the man and the woman. The next day, he went to the academy to ask Feng Yi and got a positive answer from him. Sun Lan was speechless. In a moment of carelessness, Feng Yi actually quit the singles alliance. Why so sudden? Sun Lan hadn't heard anything about it before. Even though there were signs, Feng Jin had never relented. Feng Yi said, Changxing stayed at the Feng family for a while at the beginning of the year. You know that people often visit their relatives and friends at the beginning of the year. The Feng family is also a big family, so naturally, someone has their eyes on Changxing. It's said that he's the grandson of an elder who married out. He's of noble birth and has frequent contacts with the Feng family. Because the elders of the two families had a complicated relationship, Feng Jin couldn't reject them outright, so he could only ask for help. In the end, Feng Yi got a bargain. Feng Jin and Feng Zhen already had a verbal agreement. Now that they were engaged, it was just a written agreement. In the afternoon, Feng Yi found out that Sun Lan might be going with the army for training. He looked thoughtful. As soon as he got home, Feng Yi told his father about his plan. Feng Zhen said, you want to go to the battlefield when you're not even fully grown? Feng Yi said, no matter how much you read, you won't be the next Zhao Kuo if you don't put it into practice. Why do you suddenly have this idea? You've been provoked by Sun Wen's grandson, so you insist on competing? Did he really think that it was so easy to survive in the army? Feng Yi's eyes were calm, but Feng Zhen felt that his son was rolling his eyes in his heart. Sun Lan has Sun Lan's strong points. I have no intention of competing with her. Feng Yi just felt that what he learned in the academy was enough for now. As to how to use it flexibly, he still needed to put it into practice. What was written in the books and reality were always different. Chapter 1447. Although Feng Yi was still many years old, he had always been calm and considerate. He was the most reassuring. Since he took the initiative to ask Feng Zhen to enter the military camp to gain experience, he had naturally thought it through. His stepmother, Wan Xiu, did not agree. Not only did she not support him, but she also glared at her husband. Listen to what this person is saying. Life and death are fated, don't blame others. Feng Yi was the only child of the old Feng family. Feng Zhen's body was weak and it was difficult for him to have children. If something happened to him, how could he answer to his ancestors? This father was really cruel. He was willing to throw his 12 or 13-year-old son into the army. Wasn't he afraid that Feng Yi would never return? Feng Yi naturally understood Wan Xiu's good intentions. But, father, you are weak. Because of this, I have to shoulder the heavy responsibility of revitalizing the family. Wan Xiu sighed softly. Even so, Rongli, you are still too young. Even those big and burly men can't stand fighting in the army, let alone you. If you really want to gain experience, why don't you wait a year or two, when you are a little older? Feng Yi pursed his lips and did not speak. He only shook his head and firmly rejected his stepmother's suggestion. Seeing this, Wan Xiu could only give up. Out of the corner of her eye, she caught a glimpse of her husband Feng Zhen's half-smiling face. Instantly, she was furious. She secretly reached out and pinched the flesh around his waist. It hurt so much that the smile on Feng Zhen's face cracked. Seeing his reaction, Wan Xiu's anger subsided a little. Feng Yi's matter quickly reached the ears of his future father-in-law, Feng Jin. The latter snorted and did not comment. He did not react, but Changsheng, who was sitting at the side doing her homework, could not sit still. Feng Jin said, "Is there an embroidery needle under the mat? Sit properly, don't fall all over the place." Changsheng put down her brush and stared at her father. She asked, "Father, did you say that brother Rongli is going to the military camp? Why? Our little Changsheng feels bad?" Changsheng said, "No. I just heard the maid mention that the battlefield is very dangerous. Brother Rongli looks thin and small." Feng Jin could not help but chide his daughter with a smile. Father's silly daughter. If the eldest son of the Feng family does not go and gain experience, what right does he have to marry my precious daughter? Feng Jin was happy to see this happen. How could a young man grow into a reliable man if he didn't go through real-life experiences? He would rather raise his daughter for the rest of her life than hand her over to an unreliable man who would harm her for the rest of her life. Swords and sabers have no eyes on the battlefield, but he's not going into battle. He's just studying in the camp, so there's not much danger. Feng Jin decided to let Feng Yi and Changsheng get engaged because he saw that the lad had a promising future and a reliable character. He was worth entrusting his daughter to. Otherwise, with the foundation and status of the Feng family, what else could Feng Yi have that was worthy of his attention? Feng Jin didn't care about his colleague's social status, but it was different for his son-in-law. If it wasn't for the Lord, Feng Yi's background wouldn't have made it onto Feng Jin's list of candidates. Marriage was not just about two children falling in love with each other. The background and upbringing of the two families had to be taken into consideration as well. Feng Yi could barely be considered to have been born into a landowning family, but his family had long been in decline. By Feng Jin's generation, there were only a few family assets left, and not many connections. If it weren't for the chaos of the world, Feng Jin's line of descent would most likely be in dire straits. How would they have the right to become in-laws with the noble Feng family? Feng Jin was highly valued by the Lord, so his future would not be too bad. Feng Yi had been steady and intelligent since she was young. She could barely be considered a child that everyone had watched grow up. Feng Jin was well aware of this child's character. Feng Jin reluctantly approved of Feng Yi after all these conditions were added together. Feng Yi took the initiative to ask for experience, so he had a higher opinion of him. Feng Jin said earnestly, "You're still young, so you don't understand these things. When you do, you'll understand my painstaking efforts." Changsheng nodded and said, "Yes, but father, can I?" Feng Jin smiled bitterly and said, "You haven't grown up yet, so I can't keep you. Go, remember to come back early to do your homework." Changsheng brought two maids to visit Feng Yi's house. When Feng Jin saw this, his heart felt suffocated. "Madam." Feng Jin felt a little suffocated, and he didn't let go of his wife's hand. Give birth to a boy this time, don't want a daughter." Feng Jin squeezed out two words after a while, "My heart aches." His daughter was so cute and likable, why did she have to marry someone else? Feng Jin said, "It hurts as if someone has gouged out my heart." Wei Jingxian couldn't help but laugh. She didn't expect her husband to be so childish. It didn't take long for Jiang Pengji to hear that Feng Jin and Feng Zhen had become in-laws, and the children of both families were engaged. She held her pen in a daze for a long time, then said after a while, "Children nowadays are really amazing, this is definitely puppy love among puppy love." She was dealt a blow, and the salted fish in the streaming room wasn't any better. To de Feiqiu, if I remember correctly, Feng Jin's Changsheng was delivered by the streamer, and they're engaged in the blink of an eye. Yao Yingyun, Changsheng, who just entered the first grade of primary school, and Feng Yi, who just entered the first grade of junior high school, are engaged. Don't the university students and the working people feel heartache? Why are you watching the streaming? Do you have a boyfriend? Have you found a girlfriend? You're a dog that weighs more than 100 pounds, how can you still be single? This streaming room is too unfriendly to single dogs, so smile and say goodbye. Mo Yokwai, my heart hurts, old friend. Even primary school and junior high school students are in love, How can single dogs like us, who have been watching the streaming room all year round, survive? Jiang Pengji also felt heartache. She sighed and said, Zixiao, aren't you worried? Wei Ci looked up at her from a pile of documents, blinking in confusion. Worried about what? About the expedition against Yang Tao? Jiang Pengji rested her chin on her hand and said, Aren't you worried that our children will be the same age as Feng Yi's children? Wei Ci said calmly, if Feng Yi didn't drown and die young in the previous life, Feng Yi would be 18 when Feng Yi was born. In other words, Feng Yi's children would really be the same age as Jiang Yan. Jiang Pengji said, It's a pity that Feng Yi died in the previous life. Wei Ci said, Zisher's Hanshi powder acted up, and Feng Yi hurriedly found a servant to call for a doctor, but he accidentally stepped on the moss on the stone steps and slipped into the pond. Even though the servant saved him in time, Feng Yi's body was weak, and he fell seriously ill after falling into the water, and he died within a few days. Zisher brooded over this for most of his life, and in the end, it was better to have Feng Yu. According to Zisher, Feng Yu's appearance is 50% similar to Feng Yi's. At this point, Wei Ci paused and recalled Feng Yu's appearance in the previous life. He said again, their appearance should be quite similar, but Feng Yi is dignified and serious, while Feng Yu is warm and gentle, and smiles whenever he meets people. Each has his own charm. Jiang Pengji was curious about her future son-in-law. After inquiring about it in detail, Jiang Pengji couldn't help but sigh. The thing that Feng Zhen is most proud of in his life isn't his achievements, but the 2 sons he gave birth to. He even gave birth to 7 or 8 children, but all of them added up are not as good as his 2 children. It's really infuriating. Chapter 1448. Until Wei Ci committed suicide in front of the palace in his previous life, he did not know how the future young Emperor Jiang Yan hooked up with Feng Yu. Feng Yi from Feng Zhen's family seduced Chongqing at such a young age, and Feng Yu made a vow of love with the crown princess without saying a word. Were these things passed down from generation to generation? Wei Ci felt uncomfortable at the thought. His expression turned paler and paler, and his brows were furrowed so tightly that they could squash flies. Jiang Pengji said, Zixiao, did you think of something bad? Wei Ci said, the young emperor made a vow of love with Feng Yu when he was of age. Now that I think of it, I still feel unhappy. However, Wei Ci's identity meant that he could not use his father's identity to make things difficult for Feng Yu. He could not even overreact. The emperor also turned a blind eye to their private relationship. Wei Ci was worried that the young emperor would be hurt, so he had insomnia. Does your highness know what the outcome would be if you chose Feng Yu? With Feng Yu's looks, he will definitely be an important official in the court in the future. How could he? He made a promise without permission when he was young. What if he regrets in the future? At this point, Wei Ci could not continue because he thought of himself. Jiang Yan did not even frown as she marked the memorials. Grand Tutor, you think too much. I am the future ruler of the world. Do I have to be restrained by a man? It is enough that both parties are in love. What else does Feng Yu want? One day, if he really has a change of heart, I will secretly grant him a death sentence. The secrets of the royal family and the dignity of the emperor cannot be tarnished. Only the dead can keep their mouths shut. Wei Ci was stunned for a while and asked, is he willing? Jiang Yan asked doubtfully, why not? Behind the scenes, he is the emperor's man. In front of others, he is the second son of the Feng family. He is an important official who holds great power in the court and is deeply favored by the emperor. There are gains and losses. He has to give up some things to get everything. For example, the inheritance of the clan, a normal marriage. If not, I will give him a male heir in the future and secretly bring him back to inherit the clan. The court today cannot tolerate so much willfulness. Perhaps it was because she grew up in such an environment. Jiang Yan accepted it without any resistance. She was the uncrowned young empress, so the country, the imperial court, and the people were her main focus. Romantic relationships were not as important. Jiang Yan knew that this would be a grievance for Feng Yu, but as she said, she did not lose anything other than a proper title and marriage. Wei Si asked her, Feng Yu agreed too? Jiang Yan said, he took the initiative to mention it to me. I feel that this person is very tactful and has been my study companion since I was young. It's good to know him well. Since he was going to have children anyway, why not find someone who was pleasing to the eye, tactful, and helpful? At the very least, I don't need to get to know him. Wei Si sighed. Compared to his father, Feng You's ability to read people's minds is superior to his father's. She had seen through Jiang Yan's thoughts. She had taken the initiative to make concessions and sacrifice herself in exchange for a favorable impression. I like to deal with smart people. Feng Yu is very sensible, so you don't have to think too much. There are too many deceptions in the imperial court. It's rare for someone to be willing to be honest with me. This feeling is quite refreshing. Jiang Yan said calmly, Grand Tutor, you don't have to worry that I'll be at a disadvantage. No matter how clear Feng Yu is about Gu's thoughts, it was Gu who allowed him to see it. He can't do it. Wei Si did not know what to say. He looked at Jiang Yan with a complicated and deep gaze. Strangely, he felt a trace of sympathy for Feng Yu. Jiang Pengji listened to Wei Si's recount and patted his shoulder. Even though that child is telling the truth, I still feel that you've been stabbed in the heart several times by her. Wei Si was speechless. Thinking back carefully, young Emperor Jiang Yan's words were indeed quite heart-wrenching. Jiang Pengji said, I'm looking forward to this Jiang Yan. Wei Si said, I didn't fulfill my responsibility as a teacher and a father. When she was young, she loved to smile, but as she grew older, she became more and more expressionless. From her marriageable age until Wei Si's death, he had never seen her smile again. Jiang Pengji laughed heartlessly. Different identities, different ways of living. If not, how can we keep the demons and monsters in the imperial court under control? I heard from you that the political situation in the early years of the Jiang dynasty was quite grim. Young Emperor Jiang Yan has only inherited the throne for a few years. If he didn't harden his heart, the imperial court would have long been in chaos. It seems that Wenjing, Zhi and the others are still waiting for long periods of time. The little emperor is under a lot of pressure. Wei Si thought about it and could not help but sigh. You're right, my lord. His way of education was indeed a failure. He intended to teach Fusho to become a famous scholar who lived like a cloud and a wild crane, but in the end, he made a grave mistake. According to his way of education, once young Emperor Jiang Yan was taught to study and be inflexible, how could he sit firmly on the throne? When the two of them conversed, the entire streaming room was silent, as if everyone's computer had crashed. If not for the fact that the avatars of the audience were all lit up, Jiang Pengji would have thought that the streaming room had been shut down. Tudu Feichio, oh my god, what did I hear? Porcelain Beauty, did he just say that it was his previous life? Wen Miekang sure, it's a lie, right? Zixiao actually used the script of a reborn person? Kojiao Chi fan, there's so much information in today's streaming room. I was so shocked that my brain froze just now. Zixiao is actually a reborn male protagonist? No, as a reborn male protagonist, shouldn't the correct way to be reborn be to take advantage of the opportunity to recruit troops and conquer the world? The script is not right. The 500 salted fish were all confused. According to Wei Si, the streamer was also an emperor in her previous life. The streamer also had a daughter with Wei Si, and this daughter was the future empress. She also seemed to have the style of a cold and aloof older sister. Everyone couldn't help but shake their heads to check if their brains were filled with water. Yan Rian, Manual Det. Beauty Zixiao, as the male protagonist, ended up using the script of a reborn female protagonist. In his previous life, he was depressed and failed to achieve his ambitions. He committed suicide in front of the palace and died tragically. After his rebirth, he worked hard and turned over a new leaf. He tried his best to cling to the female protagonist's thigh and make up for his regrets. He held the streamer's little hand and walked to the peak of life together, leaving his name in history. Oh my, This plot is so girly that it's been written too much. A legumen. Pft, what does this mean? This means that Zixiao, as a man, has the heart of a little princess. Otherwise, how could she be the female protagonist? Minmin Erkshu, I always thought that the streamer was Mary Sue, but the streamer is actually Long Outyan, vomiting blood. The salted fish expressed that today's bends were especially scary. A group of experienced drivers all crashed at the bends. Buqian Yaiko Sanian, Jiang Outyan x Mary Wei, I'll eat this couple. I'll eat it with tears in my eyes. Not to mention that Weibo was flooded again. Jiang Pengji was in a particularly good mood when she saw the contents of the bullet screen. The time they spent together was exceptionally short. Jiang Pengji began to busy herself again. The battle preparations were nearing the end. She only had to wait for the flag to be raised and the army could set off for the battle. In another place, the travel-worn Yan Lin finally met the current head of the Nye family, Nye Liang. Chapter 1449. Yan Lin's trip to Zhongzhou not only brought Yang Tao a powerful ally, but also affected the balance of power within the Nye family. In order to train his eldest son, Nye Qing, Nye Liang didn't do it himself. Instead, he let his son do it for him and successfully facilitated the alliance between the two families. In order to live up to his father's expectations, Nye Qing had been racking his brains and hadn't had a good night's sleep. Despite his pure and kind personality, Nye Qing wasn't stupid or stupid. He had completed the task his father had given him perfectly, and the officials who were loyal to Nye Liang had a whole new level of respect for him. From that day on, Nye Qing didn't have much time to read poetry anymore. He spent most of his time at his desk working on government affairs. When he finally had time, he immediately went to his cousin, Nye Yang, to complain. Nye Yang saw him and said sourly, "I was looking for you a while ago, but I couldn't find you. Why did you suddenly come to see an old acquaintance?" Nye Qing had lost a lot of weight recently. He thought that Nye Yang was really angry and quickly tried to defend himself. "Ah, Yang, don't be angry. I didn't want to see you. I was so busy that I didn't even have time for my meals." Nye Qing said bitterly, "Ah, Yang didn't know. I don't know why father has been leaving me to deal with these days. In order to live up to father's expectations, how could I not take it seriously? I've been so busy that I've neglected Ah Yang. I'm here to apologize." Nye Yang knew when to stop and his expression softened. He didn't have the sourness from before, but instead showed some concern. "It's a good thing that uncle entrusted you with such an important task. Why are you apologizing?" Seeing this, Nye Qing's expression relaxed again. His cousin was just this kind and understanding. "Actually, I'm here to ask for Ah Yang's help with something." Nye Yang said self-deprecatingly, "I don't have much ability, but if there's anything I can help you with, I won't refuse." Nye Qing said, "I don't have anyone I can rely on." "Ah Yang, are you willing to be my right-hand man?" Nye Yang had no reason to refuse this invitation. He couldn't have asked for more. As time passed, Nye Yang and the system realized that Nye Liang had been modifying and cultivating the firstborn. The system couldn't sit still anymore and bombarded Nye Yang's ears. "You're really not anxious at all. Nye Liang is planning to pave the way for his son." Nye Yang picked his ear and said leisurely, "Anyone who isn't blind can tell." Nye Liang did not have much time left. If he did not correct his son's temper, even if Nye Liang cleared the obstacles for his son before he died, Nye Qing would not be able to hold on. "What do you call that?" "The emperor is not anxious, but the eunuch is. If Nye Liang wants to train them, then let him train them. We just have to quietly wait for Nye Liang to die of illness. There's no need to play any tricks." After saying that, he took out a roll of bamboo slips and read it carefully, as if he was engrossed in reading the books of the sages. The system was rendered speechless by him. Everything about its host was good except for her temper, which gave it a headache. She often refuted its opinions. For the system, a host that was too opinionated was not a good thing, because it meant that it would be difficult to control. The temptation of power is too great. At the same time, it can change people beyond recognition. Do you think that Nie Qing can still be controlled by you after gaining power? The system could not help but scare Nie Yang, but Nie Yang was unmoved. Are you that confident that you can control Nie Qing? Don't I still have you? Nie Yang rolled his eyes, even Nie Yang fell for it, let alone Nie Qing. The system was stunned by his words. Why was this shameless attitude so hateful? At this time, an extremely heavy orange cat struggled to climb up the window ledge, and fell to the other side with a meow. Nie Yang's eyes flashed with a hint of a smile. He reached out to the cat and called out softly, "Cat, come here." The orange cat shook its head, meowed, and obediently passed its paw to the other party. Nie Yang hugged the extremely heavy orange cat in his arms, his fingers running through its fur as he skillfully stroked the cat. The orange cat initially resisted, but after a while, it comfortably closed its eyes. Seeing this, the system could not bear to watch anymore. Nie Yang, are you such a cat lover? Help this damn fatty lose weight. If he gets any fatter, he'll be in trouble. Because the servants around him were all sent away, Nie Yang did not need to answer in his mind. Instead he smiled and asked. Is it very heavy? The system complained. 9 out of 10 orange cats are heavy, and one of them is extremely heavy. Nie Yang continued, so what if it's heavy, I can still raise it. While the two of them were talking, they did not notice that the orange cat was looking at Nie Yang's chin from a tricky angle. Forget it, I'll ignore this dumb cat of yours. Nie Yang hugged the heavy orange cat in his arms again, preparing to go out for a walk. My cat doesn't need you to care. The orange cat was in low spirits, so Nie Yang used his finger to scratch the cat's chin and whispered a few words. The cat arrogantly turned its head away. Stop throwing a tantrum. Go out and play, remember to come back early. Nie Yang smiled as he put the cat down. After the orange cat landed, it shook its fur and walked unsteadily, as if it was drunk. The orange cat disappeared into the garden, probably to catch butterflies and flowers. Everyone knew that Nie Yang indulged in playthings and kept an extraordinarily fat orange cat by his side. Many people mocked him for his poor taste. Nie Yang was unmoved. Instead, he doted on the cat more and more. All the expensive flowers in the garden were the cat's toys. It could be seen that the orange cat could be considered a tyrant among cats. Our cat tyrant revealed a human-like confusion and fear. It covered its eyes with its paws and whimpered. Why is it that everyone else transmigrated into a human, but I'm an orange cat? This cat is too fat, it's panting after 2 steps. The cat tyrant angrily patted the soil under its paws and kept meowing. Mr. Cat was the lucky person who participated in the Dream of 1,000 Years activity. In his eyes, there was a virtual screen in front of him. Not only did countless salted fish not sympathize with him, but they also laughed at him. Up until now, there were already more than 10 lucky people. Although the previous few didn't meet Jianghu, they were still humans. Only this one turned into a cat, and his landing place changed from Dongqing to Zhongzhou. Yes, the cat first became Nie Yang's pet cat. Feng Hating, what else can you do besides laughing? Didn't you notice that the little brother's reaction was scary? There was no one else besides the cat. Who was he talking to? The way he talked to himself gave people goosebumps. By Shuega, what I care about the most is that sentence, don't we still have you? Even Nie Yang fell for it, let alone Nie Qing. Nie Yang was the strongest duke in the Nie family of Zhongzhou. What did he fall for? They didn't know Nie Qing's identity, but they felt something was off. The salted fish didn't notice any more clues, but Jiang Pengji saw it clearly. The young man named Nie Yang had a broken piece of the system on him. He could easily tell who he was talking to. Chapter 1450. It's not scary to be a cat, it's scary to be an orange cat. The huge and fat orange cat squatted on the wall, looking at the scenery outside the courtyard. It was sad and bright, meowing from time to time. If anyone understood cat language, they would know that the cat was muttering. Is there any place to give a bad review for the dream of a millennium event? I can't stand this injustice. It's rare for me to be lucky, but I actually became a cat after transmigrating. It's fine if I become a cat, but why can't I become the panda raised by Beauty Ci? Even if I can't be the panda that shares Beauty C's bed, I can't be an orange cat. Look at this weight, look at this body, I'm panting after every 3 steps. The audience laughed and laughed at him. Qingxi Cheng Qingxi Xiao, brother, you're brave. You actually want to become the panda raised by Beauty Ci. The streamer's streaming room is connected to this sub-streaming room. She knows what you're wearing. Do you want to have intimate contact with the god-slaying saber? Jianghu is famous for being narrow-minded. Who has the guts to touch her man? Hujia Zibo, a panda isn't a cat, it's a bear. Meow meow meow, brother orange cat, don't move your butt. Can't you see that the tiles on the wall are about to be broken by you? Salted fish have no sympathy. The orange cat looked at the bullet screen and sighed faintly. At that moment, the ears on his head twitched. He acutely heard footsteps approaching. He turned his head and saw a tall and handsome young man standing under the courtyard wall. His appearance was still a little immature, somewhere between a youth and a teenager. Good looks and good temperament. The fat orange cat shook his whiskers. His wounded heart was healed. Although he couldn't hug Beauty Ci, the young man in front of him was also very good. He had a bit of the demeanor of Wei Ci when he was young. Isn't this Ah Yang's cat? Why did you come here? Nye Qing reached out to Fatty Orange. The other party was unmoved, his posture as steady as a mountain. He smiled and asked the servant to bring something to stand on his feet. Then he carried the cat down. As soon as he was in Nye Qing's arms, Fatty Orange let out a long meow, wishing he could roll in the young man's arms. Brothers, the arms of this high-quality beautiful young man are full of the smell of sunshine. It smells so good. In the live stream room, Salted Fish was even more jealous. Wasn't this cat's luck too good? Qiu Yi Xia Hua, what does sunlight taste like? Might corpse. Fatty Orange relied on the fact that he was a cat. Nye Qing and the others couldn't understand what he was saying, so he meowed at the audience in the live broadcast room. When Nye Qing saw Fatty Orange's unusual behavior, he hurriedly returned the kitten to Nye Yang. As the two conversed, Fatty Orange and Salted Fish realized that this cheerful youth was Nye Qing. Seeing Nye Yang and Nye Qing getting along so well with each other, the crowd couldn't help but feel a chill in their hearts. They weren't deaf. Nye Yang's words, even Nye Yang fell for it, not to mention Nye Qing, were clearly filled with malice. Thus, when Nye Qing was about to return the kitten to Nye Yang, Fatty Orange clung onto Nye Qing's sleeve tightly, his cries of agony and sorrow. Nye Qing smiled bitterly. You usually despise it. Why do you like it so much today? Nye Yang also said, then I'll have to trouble elder brother to take care of him for a day or two. Perhaps he's throwing a tantrum. Nye Qing had no choice but to carry the orange cat away. He knew that his cousin liked the cat very much, so he took good care of it. The orange cat also took the opportunity to wander around Nye Qing's room. Seeing that Nye Qing had started working, he even climbed onto the desk and squatted down, looking like he was supervising Nye Qing. Nye Qing originally wanted to carry Fatty Orange away, but the kitten was so obedient that he softened his heart and didn't stop him. Little did he know that Fatty Orange's body contained a future soul. Through Fatty Orange's eyes, Jianghu could clearly see the contents of the documents that Nye Qing was handling. Nye Liang had the heart to groom his son, but he didn't pass any important secrets to him, so these documents were of no use to Jianghu. Fatty Orange was hesitant to write something to remind the youth in front of him. Nye Yang had malice towards him and Nye Liang, so he had to be on guard. But, just as Fatty Orange was about to go crazy, the system's notification made his whole body go cold, as if he'd been splashed with cold water. Now that he was a cat, the words he could write with his claws were already shocking enough. Would Nye Qing believe him if he wrote it? If Nie Qing went to confront Nie Yang and accidentally revealed something, this cat's life would be forfeit. Thinking of this, Fatty Orange couldn't help but shiver. He had only transmigrated for 4 hours. He couldn't be the first unlucky person to encounter a life-threatening crisis and have his transmigration interrupted, could he? The owner of this body, Fatty Orange, was also innocent. After being transmigrated, he was beaten to death by his owner. That was too cruel. Fatty Orange's thoughts of intervening were suppressed, and he didn't dare to let his imagination run wild. Forget it, he was just an outsider who experienced transmigration. How could he intervene in someone else's life? Fatty Orange wagged his tail and lay quietly on Nie Qing's lap, looking like he was saying, "I'll take over this territory." Nie Qing smiled faintly and shook his head, giving his consent to this audacious cat. They ate, slept, enjoyed the service of the shit-shoveling officer, and took a walk together. Nie Qing pinched Fatty Orange's chubby cheeks and said, "No wonder Ah Yang likes you so much. I like you a little too." Fatty Orange couldn't control his body's habit. He stuck out his tongue and licked his fur, throwing a look of disdain at Nie Qing as he licked. "Young man, you have to be more careful. Stay away from Nie Yang to ensure your safety." Nie Qing didn't receive Fatty Orange's look. Instead, he strolled all the way to the family school. The man and the cat could clearly hear the sound of reading coming from within the courtyard walls. Fatty Orange squatted on his shoulder and revealed a thoughtful expression. Nie Qing stroked Fatty Orange's cat and sighed. "I really hope that one day, such peace and tranquility can spread throughout China. Father is going to lead the army into battle. If he can return victorious, we'll be closer to our goal." After a while, Nie Qing said again, "Unfortunately, Father thinks that I'm too young and ordered me to guard the rear. Otherwise, I really want to lead the army with Father and kill the enemy." Fatty Orange rolled his eyes. "Kill the enemy? With your soft skin and tender flesh? Father's health is getting worse. I'm very worried, but this matter can't be easily leaked. I can only talk to you, you little bastard." Nie Qing somewhat understood why Nie Yang liked cats. They were obedient and didn't speak the human language, so he didn't have to worry about being on guard when talking to them. After a few hours, Fatty Orange's energy was exhausted and he fell into a deep sleep. When he woke up again, he was extremely resistant to Nie Qing. He howled and wanted to find his master, Nie Yang. Nie Qing didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Jianghu looked at the screen and pondered. Nie Yang. Can't we really have fun? His fingers twirled the clean brush, his deep eyes filled with malice. If that's the case, we can change our strategy. Jianghu originally planned to attack Yang Tao fiercely and adopt a defensive policy at the Zhongzhou front. Chapter 1451. Even though everyone already knew of their lord's temperament, changing the battle plan before the battle still made them sprain their backs. "My lord, changing your mind before the battle is not a good sign. As the commander-in-chief, she cannot be so capricious." Qi Guanrang raised his eyebrows slightly and glanced at Wei Zixiao out of the corner of his eye. He happened to catch Wei Zi's unmoving gaze. After pondering for a while, Qi Guanrang restrained his helpless expression and regained his composure. He stepped forward and asked, "Why did you do this, my lord?" According to the initial battle plan, they focused their forces on Yang Tao and prepared to take down Jianghu in the shortest time possible before attacking Nansheng. The Nie family of Zhongzhou had a fierce military force, but the army was backed by Zhangjiang Pass. They used the natural stronghold there to defend the pass, so it would be difficult for the Nie family to attack. Zhangjiang Pass was the gateway between Dongqing and Zhongzhou. The terrain there was very steep, making it easy to defend and difficult to attack. When Meng Zhan stirred up trouble and tried to sell Cangzhou to the Nie family of Zhongzhou, the Nie family eagerly sent people over for Zhangjiang Pass. No matter who took down Zhangjiang Pass, it was very profitable. If the Nie family got it, they would have the initiative in attacking. If Jiang Pengji had it, it would be much easier for her to defend. Because of the two battles, the troops under Jiang Pengji's tent had been divided into two. They had been marching for 2 days. One was to attack Yang Tao of Nanxing, the other was to attack Zhangjiang Pass of Cangzhou to stop the Nie family from breaking through. The former was to attack while the latter was to defend. Naturally, the assigned troops and personnel were different. His lord slapped her forehead and said that she wanted to change the battle plan. It would have a huge impact in the future. If they were not careful, they would delay the battle and cause endless trouble. Due to the trust between the ruler and her subjects, Qiguan Rang wanted to hear his lord's reason for doing so. If the reason could convince him, he would support it. If his lord's reason could not convince Qiguan Rang would definitely not let her mess around. He thought that Wei Ci and his lord had discussed this, but when he glanced at him just now, Wei Ci's expression was also very surprised. Thinking of this, Qiguan Rang fanned the feather fan in his hand more frequently. The frequency was more than doubled, causing his outer robe to flutter. Jiang Pengji looked at Wei Ci. Wei Ci stepped forward and bowed. My lord, it doesn't matter if you change the plan, but the difficulty lies in the fact that you have to adjust the troops on 2 routes and drag the logistics and rations. It is a taboo for a commander to change at the last minute. In Ci's opinion, I would like to ask my lord to reconsider before making a decision. Since Wei Ci and Qiguan Rang had expressed their vague objections, the others were naturally harder to convince. However, Jiang Pengji had accumulated her power for a long time, so they didn't threaten her. Let's hear what the Lord has to say first before deciding whether to support or oppose it. On the other hand, Sun Wen frowned as he realized that things weren't as simple as they seemed. Sun Wen had the least contact with Jiang Pengji, but that didn't stop him from treating his lord as a research topic. He often pondered over her. According to his understanding, his lord was a typical person who would not get up early without benefits. It was impossible for her not to know the potential dangers of changing her mind. Jiang Pengji glanced around and her gaze fell on Sun Zidao, who was seated at the back. What does Zidao know about the Nie family of Zhongzhou? Of all the people present, only Sun Wen was from Zhongzhou. If one were to talk about understanding, the great scholar Wan Changzhai understood him the best. However, he was an educator. Jiang Pengji still counted on him to help her manage the Jinlin branch. How could she bear to drag him to the front line to suffer? Nie Sun could also help, but he was disheartened and didn't meddle in these matters anymore. Jiang Pengji didn't want to force her cousin to become an official, so she turned a blind eye to his affairs. After counting them, there was only Sun Wen left. Sun Wen said, the Nie family originated in the early years of the Northern Qin dynasty. It has a history of nearly 700 years. They lived in Biyao for a long time. They have a deep foundation. After many generations of family heads, they have disciples and former officials all over the world. The Nie family is related to many gentry families by marriage. The relationships between the forces are complicated. Zhongzhou is in chaos and the royal family is tyrannical. When the Nie family raised their arms and called for help, 3 prefectures responded. They now occupy more than half of Zhongzhou. Before the 16 kingdoms, the Central Plains had been unified for 367 years. It was called the Northern Qin dynasty. The Nie family had prospered since the early years of the Northern Qin dynasty. It had continued to this day without losing its legacy. It should be noted that the Feng family, which Feng Jin belonged to, was only 100 years earlier than the Nie family. Is there anything else besides this? She joked. The Nie family has hundreds of responses to a single call. The hearts of the people are aligned. Did I kick an iron plate? Sun Wen's expression was solemn as he denied it. What a joke. If his lord was afraid to fight, his dream of revenge would really remain a dream. My lord, you must be joking. Sun Wen said, if the Nie family is described as a 1,000-year-old tree with deep roots and luxuriant branches, its crown can cover the sky and the sun. Others are fearful of it, but that doesn't include my lord. Outsiders are afraid of the Nie family. Is it really because the Nie family is powerful and unrivaled? In my opinion, they are obviously frightened by the tiger's skin that the Nie family wears. My lord is a real dragon. Why would you be afraid of these things? Jiang Pengji said, the tiger's skin that the Nie family wears? How do you explain this? Sun Wen said, does my lord still remember the Su family from Zhe County? Jiang Pengji nodded. Of course she remembered. Su Bei and Su Fei, the pair of brothers who suffered hardship. Now that she thought about it, she still sighed. Sun Wen said, the Su family from Zhe County is a good example for the Nie family from Bianzhou. Jiang Pengji raised her eyebrows and smiled. Tell me in detail. Sun Wen said, now, the most senior in the Nie family and the most influential person is the grandfather of Nie Liang, the Marquis of the Nie family. Before Nie Liang took power, the entire Nie family was under his control. Those who are old and don't die are thieves. He is no exception. He held on to his authority and refused to let go. In order to stabilize his position in the family, he deliberately suppressed his children and made them tired of fighting among themselves. He has many grandchildren, but the only outstanding one is Nie Liang. Although there was not much information, Sun Wen could guess how Nie Liang had risen to power. It was a pity that Nie Liang was not ruthless enough. He did not cut through the Gordian knot and get rid of the obstacles in his way. Now, he was troubled. Jiang Pengji asked again, in that case, the tiger's skin that you mentioned is, Sun Wen said, the Nie family has an empty shell, but inside, there is disunity and disunity. They are like a plate of loose sand. There is nothing to be afraid of when the children fight. If it was the Nie family that was united, it would not be easy to fight. If they were unlucky, it might even become a protracted war. Of course, these problems had not spread to the bone. If the head of the Nie family had the decisiveness to cut off his tail and seek survival, he might be able to turn the situation around. Sun Wen asked her, is it because of this that my lord feels that the Nie family is easier to deal with than Yang Tao? Chapter 1452. Nie Liang? Qiguan rang and the others looked at each other. They did not receive any news. Wei Ci stepped forward and said, when you mentioned this, I thought of something. A few years ago, the Nie family sent Nie Liang as an envoy to Dongqing in an attempt to force you to hand over Cangzhou. In the end, the Nie family returned without success. Nie Liang and his men left in a hurry. Qiguan Rang interrupted, Nie Liang's health has been poor since then? Wei Ci smiled bitterly and asked Jiang Pengji to punish him. He continued, my elder brother is Nie Liang's right-hand man. My elder brother secretly asked me to feel Nie Liang's pulse. I was shocked to find that Nie Liang's diet and medicine were poisoned. His lifespan was greatly reduced. Even if he recuperates carefully afterward, I'm afraid he won't live long. I heard that. Nie Liang fought for power with my grandfather. He has to look over everything personally. He probably doesn't have time to recuperate. This indirectly proved Jiang Pengji's intelligence. Of course, Jiang Pengji did not blame Wei Ci. He had confessed to her about this in the past. Qiguan Rang frowned. The secret agents sent by our army did not find any news of Nie Liang being sick or weak. Not only was there no news, but the secret agents also found out that Nie Liang ate 2 big bowls of food every time. He often rode horses and hunted. His complexion was excellent. Did he look like he did not have long to live? Jiang Pengji said, what do you mean, Wenjing? Qiguan Rang looked at Jiang Pengji helplessly. His lord had made up her mind to change the plan. Changing one's mind at the last minute will have a great impact. If it is not handled well, it will shake the army's morale. Please reconsider, my lord. Jiang Pengji had naturally considered this point. They could not come to a stalemate and could only temporarily disperse the meeting. Wei Ci and Qiguan Rang left one after another. Qiguan Rang asked Wei Ci, how confident are you in this matter? Wei Ci said, Nie Liang's health is indeed not very good. He doesn't have time to recuperate carefully. I'm afraid he has been using tiger wolf medicine all these years. If I'm optimistic, it's estimated that he only has 1 year left. If I'm pessimistic, he can still struggle on for another 2 to 3 years. He won't live long. In the previous life, Nieliang also knelt at about this time, kneeling disgracefully. Everyone knew that Nieliang was in poor health, but only a few people knew that there was something fishy about his death, and Wei Xi happened to be one of them. In his previous life, Nieliang did not trust anyone except his eldest brother, Wei Xiao. Wei Cheng secretly invited Wei Xi to the residence to take Nieliang's pulse. From the pulse, it was clear that Nieliang's poison had entered his bone marrow. However, the physician hired by the Nia family insisted that it was a congenital weakness and a cold. The medicine that was prescribed was naturally not right, and the longer it was delayed, the more serious it became. Wei Xi helped Nieliang recuperate for a while and expelled most of the poison, but he still could not save Nieliang's life. Who asked Nieliang to be too capable? The Nia clan's 5th branch was practically in an invincible position. How could the other uncles endure it? In his previous life, Nieliang did not lay a hand on his clansmen until his death. Perhaps it could be said that by the time he realized he had been poisoned by his clansmen, it was already too late. On his deathbed, Nieliang entrusted his child to his good friend Yu. Wei Yong did not disappoint his good friend. Not only did he marry his daughter to him, but he also taught and nurtured him as his own son. Thinking of this, the face of a young man with a light smile appeared in Wei Xi's mind. He had interacted with Nieliang's eldest son, Nia Qing, a few times, and had a good impression of this youth. Nia Qing did not enjoy the benefits brought about by the Nia clan's reputation. Instead, he was dragged down by the Nia clan and was implicated time and time again. It was truly regrettable. In the 18th year of the reign of Yongchen, the emperor was bedridden for several months. The aristocrats were eager to take action and Crown Prince Jianghu forced the emperor to abdicate under their support. It was more like a farce than a forced abdication. The main character of the farce, Crown Prince Jianghu, was also kept in the dark and became a puppet in the hands of others. The aristocrats at the side were secretly adding fuel to the fire. Other than the large clans like the Nia clan and the Wei clan, the other aristocrats were also involved, stirring up a turbulent situation in the imperial court. According to Wei Xi's understanding of young Emperor Jiang Yan, none of these meddlesome people would have a good ending. That was the truth. Not long after the coffin of the deceased emperor was buried in the mausoleum, the young emperor swept through the imperial court swiftly and decisively. None of the aristocrats who were involved fared well and all of them suffered great losses. This was Wei Xi's previous life. The changes in this life were too great. Everything was different. Nieliang, who was originally only playing the supporting role, became the leader and became the head of the Nia clan. However, there were many things that did not change. Nieliang was still fated to die early. In his previous life, Sun Wen had prolonged the life of the Nia clan, but now, he. Wei Xi counted the time on his fingers and could not help but feel relieved. After the internal strife in the Nia clan, the 3rd branch became the final winner. In the end, a young man named Nieliang came out on top. Nieliang was scheming, but unfortunately he lacked some luck. At that time, the Nia clan was already beyond saving. Qiguan Rang said, "The difference between 1 year and 2 or 3 years is huge. My lord seems to have made up her mind. My lord's temperament is like this. When she's stubborn, even 10 oxen can't pull her back." Qiguan Rang fanned himself and asked, "Do you have a way to make the best of both worlds? The strength of the troops on both sides is not much different. It's not appropriate to change the leader at the last minute. It's better to make the best of a mistake and replenish the logistics." For the other feudal lords, they had to mobilize their elites to attack the main area. The troops in the defensive area were relatively weak. Because of the terrain at the pass, the requirements for the quality of the elite troops could be lowered appropriately. Jiang Pengji's camp was different. Her troops were trained over and over again. Except for a small number of newly recruited troops, the rest were considered elites. Their overall quality was very high. There was not much difference in which troops attacked or defended. Therefore, Wuxia suggested increasing the investment and building more equipment to make up for the hidden danger of changing her mind at the last minute. Guanrang said in distress, "In this way, there will be a shortage of rations. It will be hard to survive the winter." Transport and manufacturing equipment also required cooks. Cooks also needed to eat. Naturally, the expenditure on rations would increase. That was an astronomical figure that greatly exceeded the budget. If there was a shortage of rations during the war, it would be a dead end. Wuxia said, "This is already the only solution. Why don't Wenjing persuade my lord to change her mind?" Guanrang snorted coldly. Wuxia and his lord had slept together before. If he could not make his lord waver, Guanrang would most likely return in failure. At that moment, Sun Wen quietly went to see Jiang Pengji and expressed his intentions. "You want to go to the Nye camp?" "Why?" The two families were obviously going to fall out, but Sun Wen still had the guts to go. Sun Wen said, "My lord, are you sure that Nielyang doesn't have long to live?" Jiang Pengji did not give him a definite answer. She said, "I'm 60% sure." Sun Wen said, 60% is enough. Whether Nielyang is really sick or not, we'll know when we see him for ourselves. The two armies are about to go to war. What if they detain you? The two armies did not want to go to war, but it did not prevent them from acting like hooligans and secretly detaining people. Sun Wen said with a smile, "I'm already a bag of old bones. There's nothing to cherish." Jiang Pengji said with a displeased expression, "How precious is life? If I don't cherish myself, who will cherish Sun Lan?" Sun Lan had not grown up yet. Was Sun Wen really willing to let her go? When Sun Wen heard that, he could only smile bitterly and change his words. In the end, he still managed to persuade Jiang Pengji to agree to go to the Nye camp. Chapter 1453. Jiang Pengji's troops were divided into two groups. One group followed her to Zhanjiang Pass in Sangzhou, while the other group was led by Fu Wang to Hu County to prepare for the war. Fu Wang's army had yet to arrive at the front line when an urgent secret letter was sent, making him think that something big had happened. Fu Wang crushed the bamboo tube and took out the neatly folded letter. He opened the letter and squinted his eyes to read it carefully. After reading 10 lines at a glance, his sword-like eyebrows furrowed so tightly that they could kill a fly. "Someone, quickly invite the general's advisor here. Say that there's something important to discuss." He was a little annoyed. Didn't he lead the troops to attack Yangtao? Why did she change the order and let him focus on defense and attack when the opportunity arose? The experience of attacking and defending were completely different. Fu Wang had always attacked as a form of defense and rarely defended passively. At present, the military camp's allocation of supplies was mainly for attack. Their defensive capabilities were relatively weak. Jiang Pengji's order put him in a difficult position. Although the logistical supplies were already on the way, it would take some time to transport them to the front line. If something happened during this time, such as the enemy suddenly launching a sneak attack, it would be a pain in the ass. He summoned everyone to the main tent overnight to discuss how to stabilize the situation and clean up the mess caused by his lord's last-minute change of orders. By the time they reached a conclusion, the sky outside the tent had completely darkened, like a pool of ink that couldn't be stirred up. It was midsummer and the temperature was hot and humid. There were so many mosquitoes and flies around the tent that they couldn't sleep. Fengzhen went back to get a basin of water to wipe his sweat, but he still couldn't sleep. He simply came out for some fresh air. Not long after walking, he met a familiar face. Fengzhen wiped his sweat with a handkerchief in his left hand and fanned himself with a cattail leaf fan in his right. He said to Yang Si, "Jing Rong, you can't sleep in the middle of the night?" Yang Si wore thin pajamas and a light muslin cloak. His slightly damp long hair draped over his shoulders. He was probably too angry to sleep. Glancing at Fengzhen from the corner of his eye, Yang Si said calmly, aren't you the same? The news of the change in military orders came too suddenly. Not many people could sleep peacefully. I've been weak and afraid of heat since I was young. Summer is especially hard to bear, Fengzhen said. I've enjoyed too much in the north these years. I'm not used to this weather. Fengzhen was from Jiangzhou's Anshan County. Logically speaking, he should have been used to it, but he was even more afraid of heat than Yang Si. Both of them couldn't sleep, and since they had nothing to do in the middle of the night, they decided to play chess and play a few rounds. Yang Si could tell Fengzhen's state of mind with one look at his playing style. He was impatient and full of worries, unlike prodigal Feng. Fengzhen had lost 3 rounds in a row. He waved his hand disinterestedly and said, "No more, no more. I'm not in the right condition today." Yang Si thought of something and asked, "Zisher, are you worried about your son's safety?" According to the original plan, Fu Wang's army would be the main attacking force, while Jiang Pengji's army would mainly defend. Occupying the natural stronghold of Zhangjiang Pass, the troops under the tent were all elites. The difficulty of defending against invading enemies was relatively low, and the danger was also greatly reduced. Now that the order had been changed, Zhangjiang Pass had switched from defense to offense, and the danger level had skyrocketed. Feng Yi had been assigned to the Lord's team and could face life-threatening danger at any time. This child has always been smart and sensible. It's the first time he's been so far away from home, and he doesn't have any relatives to take care of him. Fengzhen usually behaved in a carefree manner, and his attitude towards his son was completely lax, but he was very concerned about him. Yang Si couldn't help but laugh. Outsiders say that prodigal Feng only cares about his own happiness and doesn't care about his son. Now that I see it, it doesn't seem so. Fengzhen snorted and sighed. Most fathers feel the same way. He didn't say it, but he was concerned about him in his heart. Yang Si listened to Fengzhen's sentiments and couldn't help but think of his child who was still in swaddling clothes. His and Jiang Shaowei's child was born last year. It was a baby girl. She was small and soft, and her limbs were so soft that they seemed to have no bones. When Yang Si hugged her for the first time, his hands were trembling. When the child meekly snuggled into his arms, an inexplicable emotion welled up in his heart, as if it wanted to fill up a certain empty wasteland. For the first time, he realized that he had become the father of another life. Yang Si could understand Fengzhen's concern and concern for the child. The conditions of the march were harsh, and the summer nights were especially unbearable. Feng Yi tossed and turned in bed, unable to sleep, so he simply picked up his sword and practiced outside. He only stopped when his arms were swollen and he was covered in sweat. Perhaps he was too tired, but he fell asleep as soon as he returned to his tent. He actually had a good night's sleep. There was still half a day's journey before they reached Zhangjiang Pass. Jiang Pengji led the troops and marched at a normal speed, while Sun Wen galloped toward Zhangjiang Pass under the escort of a group of troops and horses. The two armies hadn't started fighting, but there was an atmosphere of a storm brewing. It was solemn and dignified. The Nie family's army had already arrived at the front lines in batches and set up camp. Standing at the gates of Zhangjiang Pass and looking out, there was an endless stream of crimson flags at the end of the horizon, like a burning cloud. Not only did the flag have the word Nie on it, but it also had the Nie family's emblem. Within the borders of Zhongzhou, the common people recognized the word and the meaning of the emblem. The people near Zhangjiang Pass had long since fled after hearing the news. Their families had migrated to other places. If they stayed near the battlefield, who knew if they would be beheaded by the ruffian soldiers to claim their military exploits? It wasn't like such things had never happened in the past. In troubled times, human lives were as worthless as grass. It was a luxury to even cry out for grievances when one died. Sun Wen had already handed over the document that Jiang Pengji had personally written. This was diplomatic between the two armies. It was reasonable for Niel Yang to personally summon him. Niel Yang was sitting in the tent. Below him sat a group of trusted subordinates. These people were quite famous within the borders of Zhongzhou. In comparison, Niao Yang's close friend and trusted subordinate, Lao Ai, did not have much of a presence. Niao Yang looked at the contents of the document and said, "The words are good, but the attitude is perfunctory." The contents of the document were personally written by Jiang Pengji, but the content was written by someone else. Why did Lu Shi send an envoy at this time? He's most likely here to test the waters. Lu Shi's troops are divided into two groups. The pressure is not small. Nansheng and Yang Tao are nothing to be afraid of, but they know very little about our army. I'm afraid they don't have much confidence in rashly starting a war, someone answered. Right, who is this envoy? Sun Wen? I don't think I've heard of him. The person who spoke was a young man in his early 20s. He felt that the name Sun Wen was somewhat familiar, but he couldn't remember who he was. Not only him, but the others in the tent also didn't immediately remember. It couldn't be helped. Apart from being in the limelight during the Battle of the Northern Borderline, Sun Wen had been governing the rear. His presence was frighteningly low. Sun Wen? Wait, could it be Sun Zidao who works under Lu Shi's camp? Someone remembered. Why is this person here? It was rare in the world to be able to develop a spy's career to such an extent, to have one foot in several boats and still do it with ease. Playing the northern borderline in the palm of his hand wasn't the most flashy thing. The most flashy thing was that after doing so many things, Sun Wen could still escape unscathed. Ever since the Battle of the Northern Borderline, Sun Wen had quietened down. The outside world guessed that Jiang Pengji was afraid of Sun Wen, so she was demoted and hid him. They didn't expect Jiang Pengji to put Sun Wen in an important position at this time. Niao Yang lowered his eyes and said, "It's not a big deal to test the waters. The important thing is, what is he testing? Testing the strength of the Nye camp?" Chapter 1454. The two armies were about to go to war, but Sun Wen came with Jiang Pengji's letter. No one could figure out his true intentions. Before Niao Yang summoned Sun Wen, he had Fan Chen entertain Sun Wen and secretly sound him out to find out Sun Wen's true intentions. Fan Chen? Sun Wen's heart skipped a beat when he heard the surname. He said, "I see that you are graceful and charming. You must be from an ordinary family. May I make a bold guess that you are from the Fan family of Liang?" Zhongzhou had 10 prefectures and 33 counties. The land was vast and rich. Liang was a county under the jurisdiction of Sun Prefecture. It was a fertile land of fish and rice. Because of the prevalence of private schools, Zhongzhou produced many distinguished people who left their names in history. Although the Fan family could not be compared to the Nye family, it was still one of the top gentry families in Zhongzhou. Sun Wen knew Fan Chen's surname when he heard it. He had left Zhongzhou earlier. Fan Chen's name had not spread out of Sun Prefecture, so Sun Wen had never heard of him. Fan Chen's eyes were filled with surprise. He smiled and said, "You have sharp eyes. I am indeed from the Fan family of Liang." The teacher spoke with a Biyao accent. "I didn't believe it when I heard that you were from Zhongzhou, but now I do." Sun Wen smiled. "Instead of saying that my eyes are sharp, I should say that you have sharp ears. You guessed it right away." He had lived in Bei Prefecture, northern borderline, for many years. His accent had changed due to the local influence. He did not expect Fan Chen to be able to recognize it. Fan Chen was very hospitable. He specially sent a chef to make local delicacies in Biyao. Even Sun Wen's temporary tent was decorated according to the local style. If not for the tense relationship between the two armies, Sun Wen would have given Fan Chen a 5-star rating. He was meticulous in his work. In a familiar environment, people could not help but let their guard down, especially when they were facing people who had a good impression of them. Fan Chen and Sun Wen chatted about the past in Zhongzhou. They were very congenial. No matter what Sun Wen said, Fan Chen could reply. Not long after, their relationship had taken a big step closer. To outsiders, Sun Wen and Fan Chen seemed like a pair of like-minded friends. They talked to each other happily. Only the people involved knew that they were using words as a weapon. They had exchanged dozens of exchanges and were constantly on guard against language traps set by the other party. If he wasn't careful, he might be tricked by the other party. The two of them were chatting happily when a soldier's voice came from outside the tent. Nielyang summoned Sun Wen. Sun Wen and Fan Shen modestly thanked each other and left the tent side by side. The flags outside fluttered in the wind, and the flags with the word Nya on them looked like burning clouds full of vigor. 3 ears represented Nya, and the Nya on the flag was written in seal script. It looked simple and unadorned. In Zhongzhou, this surname was even higher than that of the royal family. Even the illiterate commoners knew what this pattern meant. As someone from Bian province, Sun Wen naturally knew of the Nya clan. Sun Wen looked at the flag, his eyes like a bottomless abyss. He smiled and said to Fan Shen, who was next to him. Speaking of which, this old man and the Nya clan have an indissoluble bond. Fan Shen nodded and pretended to be listening attentively. Sun Wen said, when I was young, my talent was poor. I was always a step behind others in everything I learned. After I reached my 20s, I accomplished nothing. Only when he was middle-aged did he manage to become a lowly official. That year, I thought I had some ability and recommended myself to the Nya clan as a foreign official. Of course, Fan Shen didn't know this history, but he wasn't surprised. Since Sun Wen was from Bian province and came from a poor family, his only way out was to learn from the Nya clan and rely on them. What he felt was a pity was that Sun Wen wasn't recruited by the Nya clan. Instead, he went all the way to Dongqing and became an advisor to the enemy. Fan Shen let out a sigh of pity and subtly changed the topic. Without a doubt, Sun Wen was a talent. If he wasn't a talent, he wouldn't have been able to play the northern borderline around. This was an indisputable fact. Such a talent had recommended himself to the Nya clan as a foreign official, but the Nya clan didn't recruit him. It was a loss. Fan Shen couldn't say that Sun Wen wasn't talented enough, but he also couldn't say that the Nya clan had eyes but couldn't see and mistook pearls for fish eyes. He could only express his pity from the Nya clan's point of view. At the same time, he affirmed Sun Wen's talent to save face for both parties. Fan Shen was very good with words, and his words were very soothing. Sun Wen curled his lips. His calm eyes carried a hint of coldness. His smile didn't reach his eyes, and it gave people the illusion that he was smiling hypocritically. In reality, Sun Wen was recruited after he recommended himself to the Nya clan. However, he was old and didn't have any outstanding achievements in the first half of his life, so no one thought highly of him. After Sun Wen joined the Nya clan, he was still a lowly official with no sense of existence. He had no hope of making a name for himself. A year later, Sun Wen was discouraged. Even if he didn't go to the roll call for half a month, no one would mention him. Not long after, his only son, Sun Lai, offended a direct descendant of the Nya clan at a gathering. That person was very arrogant, ruthless, and domineering. Just because Sun Lai won first place and made him lose face, he actually sent people to break Sun Lai's legs. Not only that, he even used his connections to send Sun Lai to the border on a groundless charge. Sun Wen's family wasn't well off, but Sun Lai was also his pampered son. How could he endure such hardships? He caught a cold on the way and died early. His wife and daughter-in-law couldn't take the blow and died one after another. Of the 5 people in the family, 3 were suddenly lost. Only Sun Wen and his young grandson were left to depend on each other. Sun Wen was worried that the Nya clan would continue to persecute them and had no choice but to leave Zhongzhou with his grandson, Lan Lan. They begged along the way and wandered from place to place. Who would have thought that Sun Wen, who was like a stray dog a few years ago, was now treated well by the Nya clan as an emissary? His gaze fell on the marshal's flag outside the marshal's tent. His slightly dry eyes were filled with a bit of coldness. "Emissary, please." Sun Wen was deep in thought when he heard Fan Chen's words. He came back to his senses and nodded with a smile as he entered the tent. Nielyang sat in the main seat. Even though the light in the tent wasn't very bright, Sun Wen could see that he was a man of great bearing. This person was dignified, but in Sun Wen's view, Niel Yang was more like a scholar who recited poems and talked cheerfully with others. He wasn't a butcher or overlord who fought for supremacy and ate raw meat. After a quick glance, Sun Wen withdrew his gaze and bowed, revealing his identity in a neither servile nor overbearing manner. The two of them were separated by a distance of 6 zhang. The atmosphere wasn't right, so Sun Wen couldn't carelessly approach and take a look at Niel Yang's appearance. This lowly one is Sun Wen. I've come on the orders of my master to inquire about a matter. There were many people in the tent, but it wasn't crowded or noisy. Niel Yang's voice wasn't loud, so Sun Wen could hear him clearly. What is it? Niel Yang asked. Chapter 1455. After he finished speaking, Sun Wen looked up at Niel Yang as if waiting for an answer. There were more than 30 people sitting in the tent. There were scholars in formal attire and majestic generals, but it was so quiet that a pin drop could be heard clearly. Many people looked at Sun Wen from the corner of their eyes. Some were disdainful, some were contemptuous, and some even stood up to refute Sun Wen. This person was none other than Fan Chen, who was talking cheerfully with Sun Wen just now. Zidao, how can you confuse right and wrong? According to what I know, it was clearly the Duke of Lanting who wanted to invade Jianghu. The magistrate of Jianghu, Yang Tao, had no choice but to send an envoy to seek an alliance with my lord in order to protect the people and soldiers under his rule. Why did it become my lord's fault in Zidao's words? Without waiting for Niel Yang to speak, Fan Chen said disapprovingly, my lord is benevolent and magnanimous. He agreed to send troops to help after hearing the sincerity of the envoy. If the Duke of Lanting knew about it, he would take the initiative to withdraw his troops and quell the war. Does Zidao think this makes sense? Sun Wen smiled and said, according to what you said, Lord Guangshan intends to be the peacemaker? If so, Lord Guangshan can write a letter to inform my lord. Based on Lord Guangshan's character, how can my lord not give him face? If the three families can communicate peacefully, how can this happen? Lord Guangshan didn't inform my lord and brought more than 200,000 troops to camp outside Zhangjiang Pass to prepare for war. How can my lord turn a blind eye? If Niel Yang really sent troops for Yang Tao's sake, why didn't he write a letter to persuade him first? Without a second word, Niel Yang brought more than 200,000 troops to threaten Zhangjiang Pass. What did he mean? Was Niel Yang trying to be the peacemaker or coveting Dongqing's territory? In the words of the live stream audience, it was like being a traitor and still wanting to build a memorial. It was obviously a robber's act, but he insisted on justifying it. How pretentious. In contrast, his lord's style was much more unusual. She was not picky about excuses at all. Because you will attack me in the future, I will send troops to destroy you now. I will do it with a reason. Even a blind person could see how lame Jiang Pengji's reason was, but did she despise it? Fan Chen's expression changed. Before he could refute, his colleague stepped forward and asked Sun Wen, I heard that the Duke of Lanting is under the control of the Huang Song and the Su and Pei families. The magistrate of Jiangzhou, Yang Tao, once led troops from Nanqing to Jiangzhou in Dongqing to help the Duke of Lanting resist the enemy. Sun Wen said, official business is official business. The two families have formed an alliance to resist the enemy. Although my lord has received help from the Duke of Jingzhe, the Duke of Jingzhe has sent troops to avenge his father's death. Don't all of you know that the Duke of Jingzhe's enemy who killed his father, Zhao Shao, has been recruited by Su Bei and is now a guest of honor under his banner? Forming an alliance was one thing, but Yang Tao was no saint. He didn't come all this way for righteousness, but for revenge. Don't make Yang Tao look like a white lotus. Sun Wen didn't buy it. Even so, the Duke of Lanting and Yang Tao are allies. Sun Wen said, indeed. The man laughed again. None of the allies that the Duke of Lanting has formed an alliance with have had a good ending. Jiang Pengji and Su Bei had formed an alliance. In the end, she had attacked the Barbican, and Su Bei had burned himself to death. Jiang Pengji and Huang Song had formed an alliance. The two of them had fought fiercely. Huang Song's troops had been defeated in Changye. Although he hadn't died, he had lost all interest in living. Jiang Pengji and Yang Tao had formed an alliance. They were preparing to fight, but the outcome was still unknown. She had also formed an alliance with An Shui. Once Yang Tao had knelt down, An Shui would be next. He would probably not have a good ending either. Look, this was all evidence of her killing her acquaintances. She treated her allies so cruelly and viciously. Did she still have any morals? Why did the scholars of the world not like to rely on Jiang Pengji? It was because her reputation was too bad. Others despised her. Sun Wen was calm and at ease in the face of such sarcasm. The world is bustling for benefits. The world is bustling for benefits. Forming an alliance to resist the enemy is a win-win situation. Both parties advance and retreat together. This is a temporary and expedient measure. I dare to ask on behalf of everyone, has my lord done anything unrighteous to harm her allies in the slightest during the alliance? Sun Wen smiled and said, my lord has never done anything that hasn't dried up or broken an alliance. Your questioning just now is extremely rude. The alliance had ended. The two parties had different ideologies and standpoints. If it was time to fight, then fight. Was she still going to hold on to her old feelings and not let go? Even if she were to deal with Yang Tao now, his lord was perfectly justified. As a human, one had to fight for their dignity. Yang Tao had spread so many nasty rumors that slandered his lord. It was rumored that Yang Tao had condoned them. Who could sit still? His lord was a woman. Her reputation was more important than a man's. She definitely had to seek justice from Yang Tao. Sun Wen, whose skin was as thick as the corner of a city wall, was infuriated by his words. Another person said, the excuse that the Duke of Lanting used to send troops to suppress Yang Tao is truly laughable. How can it be justified? Sun Wen said, that's not true. As a woman, my lord's journey has not been easy. Who doesn't know that it's a taboo for her to talk about her gender? Yang Tao's behavior was despicable. He found a man who looked like my lord and made him appear naked in public. Ordinary people paid money to remove his sinful roots. His actions undoubtedly threw my lord's reputation to the ground and trampled on it. If a noble lord can swallow this malice, how can my lord establish herself in the future? Sun Wen spoke in a righteous manner. Yang Tao deserved to be beaten. The Nia family still rushed to form an alliance with him to fight against Jiang Pengji. They were obviously helping an evildoer. Someone sneered and said, whether this was done by the magistrate of Jianghu or not remains to be discussed. I heard that there is also a pair of men in Wanzhou who look like the magistrate of Jianghu and the important minister beside him, Yan Lin. The two of them did shameless things in broad daylight. Isn't this an act of humiliation? Sun Wen said resolutely, my lord has investigated this matter clearly. It was done by the traitors of the Tao family. They intended to frame and instigate trouble. If that's the case, why isn't the incident in Jianghu a ploy by the Tao family to frame Yang Tao? The style of these two incidents was so consistent. It was obviously the Tao family who instigated trouble. Jiang Pengji wrongly accused a good person. Not only did she not repent, but she also used the righteous excuse to crusade against Yang Tao. Her intentions were sinister. Sun Wen vetoed the idea once again, speaking with conviction. Why? High-quality imitations of Yang Tao and Yan Lin appeared in Wanzhou. My lord sent people to deal with them and found the culprit by following the clues. What about Yang Tao? They didn't do anything. They didn't even make an official statement. It was obvious that they had a guilty conscience. When Sun Wen said this, he habitually forgot that Yang Tao was still in a stalemate with the four factions of Nanman at the front line of Nanxing. All in all, Yang Tao was asking for a beating. The Nia family, who carried the banner of righteousness, was also ambitious and coveted the territory of Dongqing. These two families were jackals of the same tribe. They had clearly planned to bully his lord. It was 2 against 1 to bully the pitiful little girl. Chapter 1456. This Sun Wen is a bit too difficult to deal with. Fan Shen was infuriated. Recalling Sun Wen's words in the tent, he was still angry. Did this person not want to live? Did Sun Wen really think that the words "envoys are not to be killed" could save his life? With the tension between the 2 armies, he still dared to provoke the bottom line of Nieliang and his subordinates. He really did not want to live. Not to mention, Sun Wen's behavior in front of Nieliang could be considered arrogant and rude. If Nieliang really killed him in anger, Sun Wen would have died in vain. Sun Wen had the courage to confront the enemy and disregard his own life. His courage was commendable. A young general laughed. It's fine if he's difficult to deal with, but he just has to be so thick-skinned. This general sees that the other gentlemen don't look very well. Isn't this Sun Wen an old man who can't carry anything? Isn't he afraid that someone will stab him a few times and send him to hell? Wei Yong looked down. Sun Wen is probably well aware of this and has long been fearless. This was the first time he had seen someone criticize someone so rudely. Fan Shen said, "This one is curious. Did this Sun Wen come here just to interrogate Lu Shi?" Wei Yong frowned lightly. "I'm afraid it's not that simple." The others sighed as they discussed. Only Nieliang, who was sitting in the main seat, was deep in thought. His brows showed traces of hardship. Even with Nieliang's excellent self-restraint, he had been angered by Sun Wen today. He was frail to begin with, and in order not to affect the morale of the army, he forced himself to hold on. Every time he appeared in front of others, he would not stay for long in order to hide the truth. Today, his anger affected his heart and lungs. He could only berate Sun Wen and find an excuse to send him away. As long as Sun Wen was in the Nya camp, he could not easily reveal his illness. Send people to keep an eye on Sun Wen. If he makes any strange movements, get rid of him. Nieliang's thin lips parted slightly. His brows were filled with coldness, causing people to shiver for no reason. Yes. Sun Wen walked around the Nya camp's commander's tent and came out. He turned back to look at the commander's flag, snorted inwardly, and left with a flick of his sleeves. The reason why he chose to go to the Nya camp at this critical juncture was because he did not place too much importance on his own life. Initially, he was also prepared to go on a one-way trip. But now, he no longer thought so. Not only did he want to complete the mission perfectly, he also wanted to leave the Nya camp alive. No matter how big of a commotion he caused, Sun Wen had a good night's sleep. He woke up at daybreak to practice his swordsmanship. His posture was relaxed, as if the Nya camp was his own home. The spies who were secretly observing him were all speechless. This old man's son was really bold. This is Nya Ying's camp, not his home. How could he sleep so soundly and still have the leisure to practice swordsmanship? As it turned out, not only did Sun Wen have the time to practice swordsmanship, but he also had the time to be picky about the food in the camp. He made full use of his age advantage and flaunted his seniority. Even though he wasn't being unreasonable, he was still difficult to deal with. Nya Ying's men thought that they had taken good care of Sun Wen, but who knew that the old man still had 2 points of dissatisfaction. He was dissatisfied here and there. Sun Wen was a picky eater and refused to eat 2 meals in a row. When Fan Shen heard the news, he came to ask about it. After all, Sun Wen was a guest. Lord Nieliang did not intend to kill him yet, so everyone had to treat him well. Why didn't Sun Wen want to eat? Because he didn't like to eat the wheat rice in the camp. Zhongzhao also planted wheat on a large scale. The food culture here was similar to that of Dongqing in the past. Wheat could be ground into flour and made into pastries, but it took a long time to remove the bran from the wheat, which led to the high cost of fine wheat flour. The conditions in the camp were harsh. The soldiers' rations were simple wheat rice, which was easy to make and convenient to carry and store. This also led to the food being mixed with gravel and small stones. If one accidentally bit them, their teeth would be damaged, and the eating experience would be very bad. As an envoy, Sun Wen's treatment was naturally better than that of ordinary soldiers, but it wasn't that fine. Sun Wen objected to this. The old man's teeth weren't good to begin with. If he didn't eat fine food, how would he eat when he was completely old? Fan Chen, who heard the whole story, was speechless. Was this the reason why Sun Wen refused to eat? Helplessly, Fan Chen could only assign a chef to Sun Wen to make whatever he wanted to eat. Needless to say, the military camp's cooks didn't only know how to cook in large pots. The chef's skills weren't good, but the conditions in the camp were harsh, so Sun Wen was reluctantly satisfied. For food, Sun Wen sent people to ask about it several times. Sometimes he even asked the chef to come over. As he ate, Sun Wen asked the chef, "Is the military camp's cooks all at this level?" The chef looked embarrassed. He said, "I can only cook. I can't compare to the famous chefs in the tavern." Sun Wen laughed mockingly. "I'm an honored guest, but my food is so coarse." Isn't Lord Guangshan even more aggrieved? The chef didn't know who Lord Guangshan was. He only understood after Sun Wen reminded him. After he understood, he smiled bitterly and was terrified. Naturally, the Lord's meals couldn't be handled by ordinary cooks. If a spy sneaked into the camp and poisoned the Lord's meals, wouldn't it be over? To ensure safety, Niel Yang's meals were prepared by professionals. The ingredients and stove were also independent. Not only Niel Yang, but Jiang Pengji, Yang Tao, and the other feudal vassals were the same. Sun Wen couldn't get information from Fan Chen. He had to be on guard at all times, but it was much easier to deal with a chef. He didn't ask sensitive questions, such as how many meals Niel Yang ate in a day and how much he ate in a meal. He only asked about Niel Yang's daily food intake in a curious tone. He saw that Niel Yang had good teeth, so he probably hadn't eaten wheat rice mixed with gravel before. He probably wasn't used to it. The chef had been warned before, so he didn't dare to answer randomly. Instead, he chose his words carefully. Sun Wen lost interest after listening for a while. This Niel Yang really isn't an ordinary cautious person. Why was Sun Wen so emotional? He asked the chef just now and got information from him. He knew that Niel Yang stored his rice separately. Sun Wen only needed to know the approximate size and weight of the bag of rice, as well as how long it took to finish the bag. He could calculate how much rice Niel Yang ate in each meal. He calculated in his heart and found that Niel Yang really ate 2 bowls of rice per meal, just as the information said. However, this didn't prove that Niel Yang was in good health. At most, it proved that Niel Yang was meticulous enough to consider such details. If Niel Yang was in good health, why was Niel Yang only willing to see him once after Sun Wen had been in the Nya camp for 3 or 4 days? The only time they met, Niel Yang's position was still dark. Sun Wen couldn't see clearly from 2 or 3 feet away. In addition, Sun Wen had insulted so many people and behaved rudely. Niel Yang was obviously angry but didn't rebuke him. Instead, he found an excuse to send Sun Wen away. From these signs, Niel Yang's reaction contradicted the conclusion that he ate 2 bowls of rice per meal. Chapter 1457. Sun Wenjing was suspicious that Niel Yang, who had been secretive before, suddenly wanted to see him. Fan Chen tried his best to object. Sun Wen's intentions are unclear. It doesn't matter if my lord doesn't want to see him. Why do you have to trouble yourself? Wei Yong looked at Niel Yang's pale face and the dark circles under his eyes, and he had a bad premonition. Even so, rationality still overpowered the emotions that welled up in his heart. Wei Yong said to Fan Chen, "Avoiding him is not a solution. What if the Lord refuses to see Sun Wen and Sun Wen refuses to leave? The 2 armies are about to go to war, and the barracks are frequently mobilized. If he is careless and hears something, then there will be no end of trouble." Niel Yang also showed a weak smile. Sun Wen still wants to see me. I might know what he wants to investigate. Fan Shen revealed a puzzled expression. This official is slow-witted. Please enlighten me, my lord. Niao Yang said. Lu Shi divided her forces into two. This was planned by her. Last year, he had rested for a year, and this year, he had been preparing for war for half a year. Logically speaking, he had considered everything that needed to be considered. It was impossible for him to make a last-minute change, which was a taboo. Not long ago, I received a secret report that the wood and stones in Dongqing were purchased in large quantities. They were transported to the front line through Lu Shi's woodworking workshop. Most of them were sent to Cangzhou. Fan Shen and Wei Dan looked at each other. Neither of them had read those secret reports. This was the first time they had heard of them. Wei Yong asked, "Is Lord sure that it's being sent to Cangzhou?" Zhangjiang Pass was at the border of Cangzhou. If those supplies were sent to Cangzhou, wouldn't this mean that military resources would be tilted towards the front lines of Zhangjiang Pass? Fan Shen probed, "Is Lu Shi afraid of us? That's why they were in such a hurry to add more military supplies? Did she send Sun Wen to confuse us?" Fan Shen's explanation was logical, but after carefully studying Jiang Pengji's style of doing things, Niao Yang felt that something was wrong. Niao Yang said, "Our army has more than 200,000 soldiers, but Lu Shi also has 150,000 soldiers, and he also has the natural stronghold of Zhangjiang Pass to rely on. If they really fought, the odds of victory were 50-50. Lu Shi was fighting on two fronts. It was not suitable for him to use an offensive strategy as a defensive strategy. In order to conserve her forces, she had to defend on one side and attack on the other. Yang Tao was weaker, so he was easier to deal with. With Yang Tao as the breakthrough point, he gathered his troops and attacked. The army still had the strength to attack the Nanxing vassals. In the end, Lu Shi transported the military supplies to Cangzhou. Isn't that strange? According to Niao Yang's analysis, they should reinforce the southern battlefront at this time and try to take down Yang Tao in the shortest amount of time possible while still having the strength to deal with Shui. Jiang Pengji did not play by the rules. Instead, she sent more troops to Cangzhou. Was she that afraid that Zhangjiang Pass wouldn't be able to hold on? Niao Yang sent someone to collect information about Jiang Pengji. After careful analysis, he felt that Jiang Pengji was not that kind of person. It seemed like he was taking an unconventional approach, like a gambler staking everything on a single throw, but in reality, he had a well-thought-out plan and would not waste even a fraction of his strength if he could. Therefore, the act of reinforcing Cangzhou seemed to have a deeper meaning. Fan Shen was silent for a long time after hearing this, and a terrifying guess appeared in his mind. Could it be that Lu Shi wants to switch from defense to offense? Can she afford it? At this moment, Niao Yang felt a tightness in his chest. He lifted his sleeve to cover his mouth and coughed a few times. A familiar taste welled up in his throat. Niao Yang was shocked, but his expression did not change. Under the cover of his wide sleeve, he wiped the filth he coughed up with a handkerchief. Ever since he knew that his body was getting worse, he no longer wore bright and youthful clothes. He changed from indigo, cyan, and blue to dark brown, black, or black. If he accidentally coughed up blood in front of others, he could at least deceive them. Niao Yang secretly kept the handkerchief. When his fingertips touched the warm filth, a thought suddenly flashed through his mind. He frowned slightly and said, "Her? Could it be?" Fan Shen asked, "Has my lord thought of something?" Wei Dan and Niao Yang had known each other for many years. The two had long reached a certain tacit understanding. Seeing Niao Yang's reaction, Wei Dan seemed to have thought of something. Without waiting for him to speak, Niao Yang said coldly, "Lu Shi has enough troops. It won't be a problem to waste a year and a half, but my body can't be wasted." Fan Shen and Wei Dan felt as if they had been struck by lightning. "My lord." Niao Yang waved his hand and said, "The original plan was to use surprise troops to break through the gate of Zhangjiang Pass in the shortest time possible. Before anything could be done, Lu Shi suddenly sent reinforcements to Zhangjiang Pass. The difficulty of breaking through the pass has increased. If Lu Shi is more cunning and uses delaying tactics, my body. Even though Niao Yang had been hiding his illness, a few of his confidants knew. If they didn't know that Niao Yang would suddenly die one day, there wouldn't even be someone to stand up and stabilize the situation. Wei Dan immediately said, "My lord is in the prime of his life. He will definitely live to a ripe old age." Niao Yang laughed and said, "I know my body. If Lu Shi has this idea, Sun Wen will have to deal with it carefully." Fan Shin gritted his teeth and said, "Sun Wen is someone Lu Shi can use. It's better to kill him and end all troubles." Niao Yang shook his head. Sun Wen couldn't be killed yet. Killing him would easily alert the enemy. Who knew what that lunatic Jiang Pengji would do next? Niao Yang said, "There's a change in the plan. Zishuan, send someone to Bianzhou to fetch Dalong. Be discreet. If Niao Yang's body really couldn't take it, the army would definitely be in chaos. Nie Qing could still stabilize the situation here. Most importantly, Nie Qing held the military power in his hands. The Nie clan wouldn't dare to act rashly." Niao Yang thought about it carefully again and found that he didn't miss anything. Then he changed his clothes and asked someone to apply some makeup to enhance his complexion. It was normal for Niao Yang to do so. Moreover, Sun Wen couldn't stare at his face. The meeting this time was less tense, but the atmosphere was more solemn than the last time. Sun Wen returned empty-handed, but he wasn't discouraged. He couldn't take advantage of Niao Yang, but he could deal with others. He returned to the tent and waited for a while. The attendant who escorted Sun Wen wanted to see him. Sun Wen said in a low voice, "How's the investigation going?" The attendant also lowered his voice. "I chatted with the soldiers in the kitchen according to your orders. I really found some clues. In ancient times, being a soldier wasn't an honor. Many soldiers were forced by life to the point where they couldn't live anymore. That's why they became soldiers and went to the battlefield. Even if the Nie clan was rich and overbearing, it was impossible to feed every soldier with military rations. Many people only ate about 50 to 60% full. After a long time, except for the elite troops, many soldiers became sallow and emaciated. The attendants weren't treated as well as Sun Wen. They were arranged near the soldiers and ate the same as ordinary soldiers. They didn't eat their fill at every meal." He followed Sun Wen's instructions and got close to the cooks in the logistics department. While chatting, he found that there were unspoken rules in the logistics department. The logistics department had a lot of money. Many of the soldiers in charge of the cooks could eat until they were fat. The happiest one was Niao Yang's cook. Why was that? The soldier in charge of the logistics department complained, "Look at him. He eats like a pig's brain." The attendant laughed. "He's indeed a little fat." The soldier said, "Hey, isn't it rice to feed people?" The attendant said, "Isn't it the same wheat rice?" The soldier said, "How is that? The rice that the nobles don't eat is eaten by him. That's why he's like a pig's brain." The attendant said, "The nobles have to eat too. How much will be left after eating?" Chapter 1458. Hearing this, Sun Wen's entire body trembled. He quickly reached out and grabbed the attendant's wrist. He asked, did he only eat 2 chopsticks at a meal, or only 2 chopsticks at every meal? If it was the former, it meant that Niao Yang had a bad appetite. If it was the latter, it meant that there was something wrong with Niao Yang's body. This lowly one also tested him, almost every meal. Also, the attendant continued, this lowly one also heard something else. That noble ate very little at every meal, but not a single bowl of medicine was missing. The dregs of the medicine had to be burned and buried secretly. Sun Wen was speechless. I thought I overestimated Niao Yang, but I underestimated his cautiousness. It was rare to see someone so cautious. If Sun Wen didn't play by the rules, it would have been very difficult to find evidence of Niao Yang's poor health. Sun Wen pondered for a while and ordered the attendant, think of a way to secretly get some dregs. The sooner, the better. The more careful, the better. The attendant replied, this lowly one understands. After the attendant left, Sun Wen shook his sleeves and exhaled a mouthful of turbid air. It's time to find an excuse to leave. It's really hard to stay in this dragon's den. Ever since Sun Wen came to the Nya camp, his life was out of his control. There was a sharp knife on his neck that could take his life at any time. He couldn't show the slightest bit of timidity or nervousness. He had to talk cheerfully to outsiders and be confident to control the situation. It was no different from saying that a day felt like a year. Sun Wen thought of an excuse to leave while patiently waiting for the attendant's news. He didn't show any strange expression. The next day, Fan Shen received the news that Sun Wen was leaving. He raised his eyebrows slightly, not knowing what this shameless old man was up to. After asking in detail, he found out that Sun Wen was really leaving. Fan Shen pretended to be confused. Sir, you're the envoy representing the Duke of Lanting. You can come and go as you please. Why do you need my master's permission? Sun Wen smiled on the surface, but he cursed in his heart. If he left without saying a word, Niao Yang's 400 feet long saber would fall on him the moment he ran 3 meters away. The more guilty he was, the more it proved that he had ulterior motives. Adhering to the principle of killing 1,000 wrongdoers, how could Niao Yang let Sun Wen go? Sun Wen said with a smile, you're wrong. Duke Guangshan is an outstanding person. If the Lord finds out that this old man has disrespected Duke Guangshan, the Lord will definitely reprimand me when we return. This old man has lived for most of his life. Even if I can't say that I'm an expert, I still know the ways of the world. How could I not understand this? He was very anxious, but on the surface, he looked very relaxed, as if he would leave as soon as Niao Yang let him go. I feel like old friends with you at first sight. I can't wait to drink with you and talk through the night. Fan Shen probed again, it's a pity that I'm busy with worldly affairs and don't have a chance to get away. Why don't you stay for a few more days? Could it be that our army did not treat you well and neglected you? 2 days ago, Sun Wen had treated Niang as his home, but today, he said he wanted to leave. How could it not arouse suspicion? Fan Shen had been ordered to probe Sun Wen, but he had failed to dig out anything useful. Naturally, he wouldn't let this matter rest. Sun Wen had a smile on his lips, but it didn't reach his eyes. He said to Fan Shen, you and I each serve different masters, right? Fan Shen nodded and said half-truthfully, it's a pity. One day, I want to be an official in the same court as Zidao. Perhaps there will be such a day. Sun Wen retorted nonchalantly. He said, since we each serve different masters, then you should be clear of this old man's position. Now that I'm still eating the fortune given by the Lord, I'm naturally doing my part. The 2 armies are about to go to war, and this old man's mission as an envoy has been completed. Duke Guangshan's attitude is clear, and it's obviously impossible for him to retreat. Why should this old man stay? Could it be that he would stay in Niang and accidentally injure him when our army attacked? Sun Wen's reason was beyond Fan Chen's imagination. The latter thought that Sun Wen would find a fancy excuse. Unexpectedly, the other party was so straightforward that Fan Chen had nothing to say in response. Yes, both of them served different masters, and the 2 armies were about to go to war. What was the use of Sun Wen staying in Niang? Fan Shen restrained the stiff smile on his lips and said seriously, this one will inform the Lord of this matter as soon as possible. Sun Wen cupped his hands and said, thank you, thank you. Fan Shen brought the message to Niao Yang, but Niao Yang didn't release him immediately. Instead, he deliberately delayed it for a night and secretly sent people to keep an eye on Sun Wen and his men to see if they had any strange reactions. If they were in a hurry to leave but were detained, there would always be a flaw in their anxiousness. Unexpectedly, Sun Wen kept his composure and didn't reveal any flaws for the entire night. The next day, he did what he was supposed to do and was once again picky about the food in the camp. On the evening of the 3rd day, Niao Yang really didn't find anything and finally let them go. Fan Shen personally led the troops to send them off. Seeing this, Sun Wen's heart turned slightly cold, but he still looked calm and composed without any flaws. Even if you escort a gentleman for 1,000 miles, you'll have to part in the end. Farewell. The surroundings were overgrown with weeds. It was vast and barren, making people feel a chill for no reason. Sun Wen smiled and cupped his hands to bid farewell to Fan Shen. He stepped on the stool and entered the carriage, secretly instructing the coachman. Walk slowly. There's no need to rush. Send people to keep an eye on the people behind. Fan Shen brought 500 soldiers, each riding a warhorse. It wouldn't take long to catch up with them. If Sun Wen hurriedly drove the carriage away, Fan Shen would catch up with him with his men and kill him on the spot. Even without lifting the curtain of the carriage to look back, Sun Wen could feel a pair of scorching eyes locked on him. He raised his hand to touch his chest. Not only could he feel a strong and active heartbeat, but he could also feel a small bump. The attendants had secretly obtained some medicinal dregs by bribing the kitchen soldiers. Sun Wen didn't dare to put the dregs in his carry-on luggage. Instead, he wrapped it up and stuffed it into the inner lining of his shirt. He noticed that someone had secretly touched their luggage last night and the night before. Even though he was very cautious, Sun Wen still found some clues and became even more nervous. Advisor, they're still following. Sun Wen's heart skipped a beat. He asked, how? The coachman said, they stop and walk. It doesn't look like they're going to kill anyone. Sun Wen said, pass down the order. Don't act rashly. Just pretend that they don't exist and move forward at this speed. Although he said so, the enemies behind them were like the black and white impermanents holding the soul-binding chains, floating quietly beside them. Who wouldn't be nervous? After following them for a quarter of an hour, Fan Shen found that Sun Wen was still able to keep his composure. Most of his doubts disappeared. Let's go back. Fan Shen sighed. If we're fated, we'll meet again. He covered up the fact that he followed Sun Wen and planned to kill him with a cloth. He didn't want to kill Sun Wen. He just couldn't bear to part with his good friend, which was why he kept stopping and seeing him off. Go. Fan Shen turned his head back to take a look, then unwillingly turned his horse around. Chapter 1459. Bai Ning was the one who came to help Sun Wen. Although Bai Ning was a warrior recommended by Wei Ci, he had started accumulating military merits from the bottom of the military camp. Now, he had made a name for himself. He was appointed to help Sun Wen, which showed Jiang Pengji's trust in him. Counselor, Bai Ning had been waiting there every day. Today, he finally saw a figure on the horizon. His nerves immediately tensed up. When they got closer, the scouts confirmed that they were Sun Wen's men and hurried forward to welcome them. Sun Wen's face was pale, and his forehead was sweating. He felt relieved when he saw Bai Ning. Where is the Lord now? Sun Wen stepped on the stool and realized that his legs were weak. His shirt was drenched in sweat. He could not help but smile bitterly. He was old and could not take fright. After the confrontation, his heart was in his throat. He was sweating all over, but he finally calmed down. The Lord is discussing in the tent. Bai Ning saw that he did not look well and said, Counselor, why don't you rest for a while? You look. Sun Wen was an old man in his 50s. Even though he ate black sesame every day to maintain his health, most of his hair had turned gray. The wrinkles on his face were getting deeper and deeper. After the shock, his face was as pale as a sheet. He looked very scary, as if he would faint in the next second. No, I can still hold on. General, you don't have to be so careful. Sun Wen rested for a while before his weak legs regained their strength. Looking at the familiar flag fluttering in the sky above the camp, an emotion called peace gradually welled up in his heart. Sun Wen took a deep breath, shook his long sleeves, and returned to his usual appearance. Grandfather. Before entering the commander's tent, Sun Wen heard his grandson Lan Lan's voice. He looked in the direction of the voice and saw that his grandson, who had become much darker, smiled at him. "Why are you here?" Sun Wen frowned. Although he spoiled his grandson, he knew the situation. This was the military camp. To Sun Lan, too much spoiling and care was definitely not love, but harm. Sun Lan stepped forward and bowed to Sun Wen and Bai Ning. He smiled and said, "I'm working here." Because of their age, Jiang Pengji threw Sun Lan and Feng Yi to deal with trivial matters. Although they were all trivial matters, they could also be used to train them. It was the first time for these two young gentlemen, who had grown up in a honeypot, to experience the battlefield. Sun Wenhu said with a straight face, "How can there be grandfathers and grandsons here? Only the subordinates of the higher-ups are left." Sun Lan's little face fell, and she gave a pitiful, "Oh. What's in your arms?" Sun Wen asked. Sun Lan said, "I've just sorted out the military affairs to send to the Lord for review." The corner of Sun Wen's mouth twitched. It took him quite a while to restrain the urge to give his grandson a piece of candy. "Hurry up and go." Sun Wen said, "Since it's a military matter, it must be sent to the Lord's desk as soon as possible, no matter how urgent it is." Sun Lan had never seen such a stern grandfather before and was immediately intimidated. She hugged the stack of documents in her arms and jogged to the commander's tent. Sun Wen gritted his teeth and said resentfully, "This kid, fortunately, it was just an ordinary military matter. If it was a major military matter, this brat would have committed a grave mistake." Bai Ning said, "Why are you so angry, counselor? This general has heard that the previous lord also praised Sun Shao Langjun and Feng Delang. Although the two of them are young, they are very disciplined in handling matters. If they train for a few years, they will definitely become capable officials." Sun Wen said, "Capable officials? Capable officials are not cabbages sold on the street. Lon Lon is still far from that." Bai Ning smiled and said nothing. The two entered the tent one after the other. Jiang Pengji was indeed in a meeting. Sun Lan was sitting in a corner and listening carefully. Feng Zhen's son, Feng Yi, was sitting in a corner behind Jiang Pengji and was recording something. Feng Yi was recording the contents of the meeting, such as who said what. He did not need to miss a word, but he could not deviate from the original meaning. Sun Wen stepped forward and bowed. "Greetings, my lord. I was fortunate enough to not disappoint you and have returned with important evidence." Jiang Pengji naturally remembered why Sun Wen had gone to the Nye camp. She hurriedly asked, "What's the result?" Sun Wen took out a small bag of medicinal dregs and said, "According to my many investigations, Niao Yang's body is already like an arrow at the end of its flight. He eats less than half of a normal person's 3 meals a day. Apart from that, he must drink a bowl of medicine every meal. This is the dregs after the medicine is brewed. How much is half of a normal person's diet? A normal man needs to eat 1.5 to 2 catties a day. The elites in the military camp eat even more to ensure their body's nutritional needs. According to the standards of the audience in the streaming room, this amount is enough for each meal. What they don't know is that most people in the military camp eat wheat rice to satisfy their hunger. There are very few side dishes, so the proportion of staple food is high. According to Niao Yang's eating standards, even if he is healthy, he will get sick. Among the people in the camp, only Wei Ci was proficient in pharmacology. He took the medicinal dregs from Sun Wen and sniffed them. After a while, he pinched a little and put it in his mouth to try. Wei Ci had been weak and sickly since he was a child. He could not live without medicine. After he grew up, he also needed to take care of his body with traditional Chinese medicine. His tongue was extremely sensitive. He could tell which medicine was in the dregs with just a little taste. Wei Ci borrowed a pen and ink to copy the medicine in the dregs and passed it to everyone. The medicine is fierce and the dosage is extremely heavy. If it is for treatment, taking it a few times is enough. However, it is said that it is to prolong his life with strong medicine. Wei Ci said calmly, "From this, it seems that Niel Yang's health is not optimistic. Qiguan Rang did not understand pharmacology, but he knew that there were a few medicines that would not appear in the regular prescriptions because the medicine was too fierce. Qiguan Rang was well aware of what it meant once the doctor prescribed these medicines. Zixiao, in your opinion, how long does Niel Yang have to live? Jiang Pengji glanced at it and put the paper aside. Wei Ci said, half a year. He needs to rest and recuperate. It is not advisable to think too much and not to be overjoyed or angry, otherwise. It is not advisable to think too much and not to be overjoyed or angry. Jiang Pengji curled her thin lips and said with a smile, this seems a little difficult. Wei Ci pursed his lips and did not speak. Oh Shiji, I've confirmed it with your eyes. He is not someone to be trifled with. Hurenren, sinister face. The streamer is clearly telling others that she wants Niel Yang to think too much and be overjoyed or angry. Tong Meng, being angry is enough. It is impossible for him to be overjoyed. How can the streamer be so kind and let him be overjoyed? Looking at this scene, many of the salted fish faintly had the illusion of taking the side of the evildoer. Blue drawer, every time I see the streamer smile like a villain, I suspect that she is actually a villain and does not leave the protagonist a way out. Chapter 1460. Jiang Pengji glanced at the bullet screen and found it funny. Not to mention carrying crystals, even if she carried spring water, she could still defeat the so-called protagonist. Zidao is convinced that Niel Yang will die soon, so let's discuss how to make him overthink and shocked and angry. Jiang Pengji said with a smile. Feng Yi, who was taking notes, shook his wrist. The ink on the tip of his pen dripped onto the paper, forming black spots. Do I have to record this too? Feng Yi's expression showed that he was struggling. Seeing that his uncle was used to it, he chose to record it truthfully after some hesitation. If this content was passed down to future generations, his lord's noble image would be destroyed. He might even be labeled as sinister and cunning. Feng Yi's pen flew as he carefully recorded everyone's words and expressions. The more he listened, the more puzzled he became. When the meeting came to an end, Feng Yi privately asked Qiguan Rang. Military counselor, there's something I'm not clear about. Before Feng Yi went with the army, Feng Zhen secretly asked Qiguan Rang to take care of him. He also told Feng Yi that if there was anything he didn't understand, he could ask Qiguan Rang for help. Feng Yi naturally wouldn't waste this opportunity. Qiguan Rang gently waved his jade fan and opened his eyes slightly. He asked, what is it that you don't understand? Since Niel Yang doesn't have much time left, why don't our army defend Zhangjiang Pass and delay for half a year? Feng Yi was puzzled. Just now, from what my lord said, it's clear that you want to gather the army and take the initiative to confront the Nye family. Won't our army suffer great losses? Qiguan Rang said, your idea is correct, but you forgot to consider the internal situation of the Nye family. When Feng Yi heard this, he quickly put on a posture of listening attentively. In an instant, his eyes lit up. Qiguan Rang said, after Zhongzhou was destroyed, the Nye family recruited troops at the fastest speed. They stabilized the situation while using their connections and prestige to recruit talents and families for their own use. However, not everyone was wholeheartedly convinced by the Nye clan. A considerable number of people follow the crowd. They have other thoughts in their hearts, but the Nye family is powerful and they have no choice but to rely on it. To put it bluntly, the Nye family's internal forces are messy and the people are not united. If Niel Yang dies suddenly and the front line loses, the Nye family will inevitably have internal strife and fall apart. To make an analogy, the Nye family was a magnet that forcibly absorbed the metal fragments around it. Once the magnetic force was gone, wouldn't those metal fragments be free? The longer Niel Yang lives, the more stable the Nye family will be. He will also have more time to pave the way for his successor. Even if he suddenly dies, his successor can stabilize the situation, which is extremely disadvantageous to our army. Qiguan Rang continued, if our army defends Zhangjiang Pass to the death, the the morale of the Nia army will not be affected and will remain high. Even if Nieliang suddenly dies, they will be able to survive for a while by relying on this morale. Feng Yi tried her best to listen, slowly sorting out her thoughts. What you mean is that, the Nia clan is currently in a state of crisis. Once Nieliang dies, the morale of the Nia army will plummet, and the forces in the rear will also be in turmoil. The large and small forces that were originally attached to the Nia clan will become disloyal. If it can be broken into pieces, my lord will be able to lead the army to nibble away at it one by one? Qiguan Rang laughed. That's about it. Feng Yi's guess was confirmed, and a bold idea popped into her mind. My lord intends to use this opportunity to enter Zhongzhou. Not only did he want to swallow Yang Tao and beat An Shui to death, but he also wanted to get a piece of the cake that was the Nia family of Zhongzhou. That will happen sooner or later. Qiguan Rang's expression was indifferent. It was impossible to tell whether he was happy or angry. He said, if the Nia clan can be broken into pieces in one fell swoop, then taking over most of Zhongzhou will be as easy as pie. My lord changed his mind at the last minute because of this idea. Feng Yi instantly understood and bowed to Qiguan Rang in thanks. Thank you for clearing up my doubts, my military advisor. Qiguan Rang showed a rare smile. He said, you are more sensible than your father. Feng Zhen acted like a big boss when asking for help. He wasn't as sensible as his son. Sun Wen returned to the headquarters without any mishap. The two armies were facing each other with Zhangjiang Pass as the boundary. The atmosphere was tense. At the same time, in the territory of the Nia clan in Bian Prefecture. Yang, let me tell you a piece of good news. Father has allowed me to go to the battlefield. Nia Qing had thought that he could only squat in the rear to handle trifling matters. He didn't expect that his father's messenger would come to pick him up. Ever since he was young, Nia Qing had always looked up to his father, Nia Liang, as a role model. He hoped to gain his father's approval and praise. Unfortunately, his aptitude was poor and he couldn't reach his father's standards. This time, Nia Liang had led the troops into battle, but Nia Qing had been ordered to stay in the rear to hold the fort. He had been disappointed for a while. When Nia Yang heard this, he suddenly opened his slightly narrowed eyes, a look of shock and horror on his face. Why did uncle suddenly change his mind? Didn't he just tell you to guard the rear? Although Nia Yang asked this, his mind was spinning in circles. Calling Nia Qing to the front lines at this time naturally wasn't because Nia Qing was capable. It was most likely because Nia Liang's health wasn't good. If anything happened to Nia Liang on the battlefield, Nia Qing could stabilize the situation as the heir and take over military power. With a thought, Nia Yang understood the intention of Nia Liang's action. Nia Qing said, father must have his reasons for doing this. Nia Yang cupped his hands and smiled. Then, little brother will congratulate elder cousin and wait for your triumphant return. Nia Qing said, there's no need to wait for my triumphant return. You can come with me. Nia Yang was shocked and said embarrassedly, uncle wants you to go. It's not good for little brother to go as well. Nia Qing said, why not? I could somewhat guess my father's intentions. If the situation is really that bad, it'll be dangerous for Yang to stay here. Why don't you come with me to the front lines? Although I can't compare to father, I can still protect you. If something happened to Nia Yang, there would be a lot of internal strife in the Nia family. Nia Yang was usually close to him. If he stayed on the family land, he might be mistakenly killed as his trusted aide. After thinking about it, it was safest to bring Nia Yang with him. At the very least, there were more than 200,000 soldiers at the front lines. As long as he had military power, those thieves would have to think twice before making a move. Nia Yang was silent for a while. He was moved. Thank you, elder cousin. At this time, the system laughed coldly. Nia Qing and Nia Liang aren't here, so you can make a move. If you go to the front lines with Nia Qing, what will happen to the big and small forces you've secretly recruited? Nia Yang was too egoistic. He changed plans without any discussion. The system hated the feeling of being out of control. Nia Yang laughed coldly. The older he grew, the more he felt that this thing was a hindrance. Say, if Nia Liang and Nia Qing both die on the battlefield, who will be the only one who can stand up and stabilize the situation? You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.